the iconic band from the 90s and
another one.
2000s.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's Jill
There's
and
the
Jane.
song Jane by Jefferson Starship.
Hold on, before
And
we start,
there's-
guys,
yeah.
I've started. It's live.
Oh, we're
No,
live.
no, I know, but before we really get into it, I feel like
Oh.
we're forgetting something.
What are we forgetting?
Come on, wait, come with me. Okay. Happy
Birthday
birthday
to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Hutch. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, boys. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh, there's one other thing we forgot. Today is July 28th, which means it's the Peruvian Day of Independence.
Wow, let's
Somos
go.
libres.
All right, so enough about that.
Hey, that's my heritage, man. What are you
All right,
doing?
I think we're gonna give Lakshya a big screen here.
Oh, yes.
He's
Yeah.
earned it.
He has earned it.
The two best contributors.
How am I gonna do this? Let's see. I'm gonna put Hutch down here and put Lakshya here.
No,
Because the angles, because too many people are looking in like this direction. It's throwing
Okay.
off the whole
All right, the
fucking
angles.
thing.
All right,
There's
I'll-
no
I'll-
symmetry.
the angles.
Symmetry.
Symmetry.
Sorry, that's my Kentucky coming in. Okay.
All right, boys. Well,
Yeah.
let's get into it. Let's get introductions out of the way. So, Lakshya, I think I found your account during the 2024 campaign. I think I
was
started
tough.
following you last year. Can you talk a little bit about what you do, what got you interested? I mean, how old are you, by the way? You seem pretty young.
Yes, how old do you think I am?
You're 52.
28.
You are a well-preserved 52.
I'm 28.
Whoa!
28. Okay.
Let's fucking go, Lakshya.
Yeah, I'm actually an engineer. I work in renewables, and I actually work on making the planet a more sustainable place through AI. So if you ever want to yell at someone for data centers taking up too much water and power, I'm not the guy, because I work on renewables here. So
We
but
need people like you.
that's my day job. But on the side, I do a lot of election modeling and a lot of political modeling. And so most of what we do is at Split Ticket, which is our election site, our election firm, we try to make actual quantitative estimates of elections. And we try to basically show people what the numbers are behind such things. Because let's be real, if you wanted like someone to give you punditry, there are a lot of people that do that, and a lot of people that do that better than a 28-year-old engineer in California. But what we have that a lot of other people don't is that we actually have hard quantitative skills that we can use to show you when the numbers don't comport with your reality. Like I can give you a great example. You know, like last year in May, a lot of people in DC thought Democrats were going to run away with the House. And our first model had Republicans at 55%. And that was not received well. But I told people, I'm like, look, when Biden's polling with 2 points down, how are you going to expect Republicans to lose the House? And that's the type of value we bring.
I feel like it's so interesting you say that, because I did find, as a casual observer of you, of Nate Silver, or some of these other data guys, that there were times when the kind of sober mind would kick in for me. But very often I was copium hunting, and I would get very like upset at Nate Cohen because he was saying some shit I didn't like. I was very upset with you at some things that you said, but ultimately I think it's better to stay informed. And I don't think, I think because it was more expected, because I follow people like you and Nate, that like this wasn't out of the realm of possibility. It didn't sting as much, and perhaps in other elections. Certainly, I think that a lot of people went to the 2016 election with a certain expectation that Hillary would win. And I think it's thanks to people like you that we managed to get Joe Biden off the ticket, which I guess the first thing I want to ask you is, don't you think that that was the right move and maybe save the Democrats a shit ton of work in the Senate and House in the future?
The way I put it is that had Kamala Harris not been the nominee and had it been Joe Biden instead, we would currently be asking, could Republicans potentially get a filibuster-proof majority in 2026? We would be looking at 57 Republican Senate seats at the minimum. We would be looking at Can Democrats turn Maine blue again, or can Democrats turn New Jersey blue? How did New Jersey go red? That type of stuff. New York would be within single digits. That's the type of catastrophe that really waited for Democrats if Biden was on the ticket. And what infuriated me about that was the reality was in front of our eyes. After the debate, especially before the debate, it was clear Biden was not the strongest nominee, but you kind of held on to the hope and the copium that maybe he could just reset expectations. Maybe he was actually the sharp Joe Biden who had his fastball and he was just, didn't take the press seriously. But once the debate happened, all the evidence was right in front of our eyes that whatever you think this guy can do, it's very clear nobody in America is going to buy that. And if you continue to try to gaslight people about what they've just seen, what's going to wait for you is a punishment that is so much greater than what Hillary got in 2016 that you're going to question why you're in politics at all.
I think for a lot of people, I can't speak for everybody here. I'm pretty sure everybody's preference was going all the way back to 2022 or 2023 is that they wish Biden had announced after the midterms that he was just going to be a one-term president. But when he doubled down on running, I think a lot of people, it was the historic incumbency advantage. It was the fact that the midterms weren't as brutal as people were expecting. We were hearing all sorts of expectation setting about a red wave, and it was more of a pinkish trickle. I believe we actually expanded our Senate majority in the Senate.
It wasn't just the midterms either. It was like we were massively overperforming in special elections.
Elections, yeah, that was one of the things I was going to go to. And there was also the objective strength of Biden's legislative accomplishments, at least on paper. And I think that's what, as the polling looked the way it did, and Biden was, I would put it with maximum charity, perhaps over charity, spotty when it came to, his rhetorical performance. He would have a strong State of the Union and then like shitty public performances prior to the debate. I think that's what so many people were thinking, okay, this could still be a competitive race. But you thought it was doomed long before the debate.
No. I didn't think it was doomed long before the debate. Before the debate, I thought that we are facing a very weak Republican nominee in Donald Trump, a real incumbent who people felt still had his fastball and was still capable of being on top of the issues. I thought a real incumbent would not be down by 2 to Donald Trump and trying to make up ground. But I think there was, we all like to play, the genius, the oracle, and the what ifs, and we can say, oh, I always knew that. No. Look, you can look at Nate Cohn's columns. You can look at what I said. All of us said he doesn't seem like the best nominee, but none of us predicted what happened in the debate because, frankly, if that was not such a shock, what happened afterwards would not have happened. Yeah. So it's important to have some humility there because, we didn't think he was doomed. We thought he could still win until the debate. And then it went from hey, he's got a 40% chance of winning to, Jesus Christ, maybe dial that down to like 10.
Well, before we dive too much into the weeds, I do want to get into your bonafides a bit more. So like, so you're doing a lot. Like you got a day gig of like engineering, and then you're also doing this thing on the side.
Yeah, that's kind of a shot. I just got to say for the record, like given how prolific you are with what I now know to be your side hustle, like I'm stunned that you actually have a day job instead. Do you want to reveal which one you enjoy doing more, or which one's more of a passion? You want to give the game away there?
The nice thing about writing code is that at least code does what you tell it to do. Now, it may not be what you want it to do, but it is what you tell it to do. When you analyze people don't do what you want them to do, and they sure as hell don't do what you tell them to do. And part of the issue is when you're doing political work, the battle isn't just implementing something that works. The battle is convincing people that it works for the right reasons. And then the battle is making sure that if they hear what they don't want to hear, see in your day job, you can give them financial numbers and say, this is saving you $5 million. Like it or not, that's what it is. You can't do that in politics because there's 50 different explanations for something that's quite qualitative and you're trying to quantify it. And so I enjoy my day job. I find easier than politics, but I like to think that the material impact that I make is arguably greater in terms of influencing how people can look at a small slice of elections. And if I could do that, well, it is the most powerful country in the world. And I think it's important.
Well, how did you get into politics? And I guess that kind of dovetails nicely into the question of like, what do you think is the biggest problem with political discourse right now? Like, so for example, like I remember clicking on every single poll thread in 2024 that you clicked on, like the top like 50 comments were all people complaining that it was a partisan poll or whatever. And like there was always this accusation of like partisan influence. Are you trying to accomplish a specific goal within the sort of political realm? Are you trying like, yeah, what do you think are the problems? What are you working on?
Yes. I mean, how I got into it was like most engineers, and especially like most Silicon Valley engineers, because I live in California, I have a very hard time just taking at face value what everyone says. My one exception is vaccines. That one I explicitly just straight up believe. I'm like, yeah, I don't need to dive into the studies on that. I just trust that. But outside of that, when people give me like political takes, I'm always just like, really? Like, is that what happened? Like, I remember in 2016, which is really what kickstarted a lot of it for me, everyone said, even the modelers said Hillary had a 92% chance of winning. And I went back and I looked at the polls and I was like, she was up by 2 nationally at the end of it, by 3 nationally in the polls at the end of it. Why are we surprised that she won by 2? She was up by 5 in Wisconsin, but that's actually up by only 3% in vote share. Why are we surprised that there was that type of error? That's what kickstarted it for me. And you know, I'm a Democrat. I don't hide the fact that I'm a Democrat. I don't vote for Republicans, but others that split ticket do. And I find that interacting with them and having them check my analysis is really important because there's enough partisan people who work for the party, who are, you know, beholden to the party. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I'm not adding any value in that. My value is because I have a day job, I can tell people to go fuck themselves if they say, I don't like what you're saying here. You should be careful. The Democrats won't like to hear that.
Has that happened? Have people, like, you know, party insiders, people say, hey, we don't like what you're saying here, or hey, you should take a look at this or that?
Oh yeah, all the time. But I mean, like, I just don't listen. Like sometimes members of Congress are like, why don't you RT this? And I'm like, I don't agree with it. Why would I retweet you?
Yeah.
Well, we're obviously seeing signs of ideological capture within what are supposed to be more sober elements of the Democratic Party. Like it was reported that, you know, they're in the process at the DNC of conducting the 2024 postmortem, but it was reported that they weren't going to consider, you know, Biden or the timeline for Harris, like major factors that you think are outcome determinative. And it seems to me that the only reason they would even contemplate doing that is because they know if they look under the hood, they're going to see shit that they don't like. And you can't have an accurate autopsy unless you're willing to actually just follow the evidence. So it's good that, you know, people like you are out there providing sober analysis, even if they don't want to hear it.
Can I go a little harder, Josiah? I just want to say part of that postmortem stuff that's happening now with the Hunter Biden and Jamie Harrison of the world. I want to go a little harder and say I take great umbrage with the way that some Democrats have reacted to the loss. And people, you know, I liked the Hunter Biden interview. I thought he, like, in some respects, he was funny and chill and personable. But his whole painting that there was this massive betrayal, especially with what just you know, Lakshya just said about. I mean, you're fairly certain that if we had Joe Biden on the ticket, we'd be talking about potentially a red Maine, potentially a red New Jersey. I think that there are massive stakes here, and if you're not taking seriously the data as a postmortem, or if you're trying to push these like really awful narratives about how the Democrats owed it to Joe Biden to stick it through and see what happens and roll the dice, you know, I take great umbrage with that.
No, I mean,
I think it's also, I was just going to say, like, to Pisco's point, one addition to that I find to be a little extraordinary about Hunter Biden's claims there is that Biden's own internal polling, like his own managed internal polling, showed him completely underwater, totally fucking underwater, right? I mean, and I understand that there could be some like counterfactual argument of like, well, that was polling that was over the summer and you still have 5 months to go and things could have like regressed to some, you know, there could be like a sine curve here that, you know, we're following. But I mean, come on, that's insensible. As soon as Kamala becomes the nominee, you see the polls, you know, that was what caused the polls to immediately start to tighten significantly by a really large margin, right? So it just seems clear that directionally, like a big thing was literally just the fact that Joe Biden was the candidate as to why the Democrats were polling so badly.
I mean, look, I think it cannot be overstated that this was a Biden specific problem, because I can show you poll after poll of Senate nominees, of House races and whatnot. And, you know, when Biden was at his nadir, Ruben Gallego was still leading in Arizona. Okay. Like when Biden was trailing in states like Pennsylvania at that time, right? Like Bob Casey was still more than competitive. When Biden was trailing places like Michigan, like Wisconsin, like Nevada, Jackie Rosen and co. were still up. This was a Biden specific problem. And Nate Cohn pointed it out at the time too, right? Like the weakness that Democrats have induced was one of their own making. They did not need Biden on the ticket, but everyone kind of doubled down because no one wanted to tell the emperor that he had no clothes. And I get it, because when he decides to run again, how are you going to do that? But that's what ended up happening.
I think a lot of people placed personal loyalty to Biden above just a very cold calculation about what represented the best chance for the Democrats in 2024. And I think a lot of people have the view that if you acknowledge what you're saying, these plain truths about Biden's sort of unique weakness as a candidate relative to the other candidates, I feel like in part they think that it's a betrayal of Biden. It's a refusal to acknowledge that he actually was a pretty fucking decent president on a number of issues. And to me, this is just such a flawed way of looking at politics. Like, I don't think we should be loyal to any particular nominee. And like to Pisco's point, you know, if I was Joe Biden, I would be glad to see my son sticking up for me in that way. And he did say a lot of stuff that I thought was like really based and correct.
Yeah.
In terms of crediting his dad for doing really good stuff. But the whole idea that, you know, the party leadership betrayed him by pushing him out, I think that betrays a sort of egocentric, self-centered view of politics. Like you should put the party and the country above, you know, your own sort of selfish desire to have a good legacy, I guess.
Do you believe that you owe the people something as a politician, or do you believe that the people owe you something? I think that's the central question here when I look at Joe Biden's actions post-debate. When it was clear that people didn't have the faith in him, right? Do you owe the people something? Do you owe the nation something, or does the nation owe you something? And I think Biden's circle saw it very much as the nation owed him something, because everything was about, this is about the story of Joe Biden. And I was like, does he realize this thing has consequences?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because when it comes to electoralism, I actually think that there has to be a degree of reciprocity, and it's interesting because we'll probably talk about this at some point because Hutch, you know, kind of organized this interview. I want him to take the lead, but at some point, you know, you retweeted an analysis, and it might have been by a colleague of yours. I was looking for it about how the Biden administration is viewed as a total failure. And what's interesting about that, given that, you know, one of your positions is that the electorate is looking for people to deliver material results, at some point we have to grapple with the fact that legislatively, Biden was a more successful president than Donald Trump, and yet he was not rewarded for his legislative accomplishments. And so I want to explore that, because to me, even though I don't have a personal loyalty to Biden, he's a means to an end. There has to be a degree of reciprocity in that if you elect somebody and they deliver results, then you need to vote for them again, or their party again, empower the party again, so they can continue to deliver results. And that's how you get that feedback loop of continued success. And I don't know, Hutch, if I'm jumping the gun there, but I know at one point that's something I would like to talk about, like to grapple with.
We can jump into that. That's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me, I think it's pretty well established here that I don't vote for Republicans. I've voted Democrat straight ticket all my life, and I plan to do that for 26 and 28. So let's just contextualize what I'm about to say with this.
Sure.
What did Joe Biden deliver to the average voter that would make them excuse 8% inflation? Let's just start with that. What did Joe Biden deliver to people that they saw as a concrete result of his policies that would make them excuse 8% inflation?
The closest thing I would be able to say would be the checks in the American Rescue Plan, but if those are basically erased by 8% inflation, like, I don't think you could point to like specific tangible.
They also got checks
results
under Trump, and you can say it was a Democratic Congress, but the fact is people associate the policy with the president, not with the Congress.
Right.
The child tax credit would be, I think, something that was like very beneficial for millions of families.
It was enhanced. It was even bigger than the one provided by Trump.
The student loan relief was a big thing for like 4 to 5 million people who got their loans wiped out. I take your point.
Even the vaccine rollout, I would say too, just like overall as a policy prescription, the economy was able to open back up because President Biden had a much more competent and expansive vaccine rollout than what we had under Trump. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
The instinctual pushback to Lakshya would be like, well, that wasn't Biden's fault. But I don't even think you're saying that. I think you're just
he's not. Yeah.
I think you're speaking to people's perceptions. So like if somebody is president and you go to the grocery store and things cost 8% more than they did, a few months ago or something like that, 90% of Americans are going to just vote the president, and that's just something that you have to grapple with. And we've talked about it on the podcast. His whole reframing of that, like celebrating the fact that we did less bad than every other country, I think was a huge mistake. Like branding the whole Bidenomics thing was just a fantastic error, I think, in my opinion.
Well, I agree with that. So this is the thing, right? Like, you may not think it's fair, and by you, I just mean like the president. He may not think it's fair that people are blaming him for 8% inflation, but at the end of the day, the average person says, right? Like, look, I don't have the power to fix the grocery prices, but if one person in the country does, at least the president should be able to do something about it. Now, may not be the case that he could. It is not the case that he could in a lot of places. But not only did they not see any change other than prices going really far up in that sense, they also saw the president saying, the economy is working. It's really great. Everything is good. And that, it's like, all right, don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. That's where it comes from, right? Like it was.
So you don't buy vibe session, because I think that there's some vibe session stuff for sure. Like, so let me give you an example. I think that when people, for example, when inflation was coming back down to a more normal rate, people didn't really give Biden much credit for that. Growth was, we had real wage growth after a time. And maybe what you're saying is that people view the kind of inflation, and I would agree with you, as like a real problem and something that's sticky and it's not their fault, where they would attribute like a raise to their own good conduct, right, as opposed to the good work into the economy. But do you think that there's any of that vibe session going on? I mean, we had decent growth, we had a good recovery, we never had massive unemployment, so we didn't really have a recession. What are your thoughts?
So I don't think politics stops at the water's edge, right? If you look internationally, every single incumbent government in the world got battered post-COVID. The inflation that was worldwide was terrible. And it's important to note this because it helps you contextualize globally what's going on. And the same tensions that happened globally also started happening in the United States. That's number one, to just contextualize all of this with. But number two, when it comes to was there a vibe session? Well, I would say, yes, the US's economy did better than every other country's, but real wages didn't go up for 2 years. If you are an American, you are expecting, especially when you see these metrics like, hey, we're growing in power relative to Japan, to the UK, to Germany, to Italy. If you see all of that, your expectation is that your quality of life continues to improve. You don't want to spend 2 years of your life in like a static pattern.
Can I ask a quick follow-up on the Pisco thing here? Because it's interesting, like some of this is coming back to me. I take your point about the lack of advancement, at least for the first 2 years under Biden, in like critical metrics, which really hit close to home. What about towards the election cycle, though, in 2024, when we kept hearing, I was actually surprised that Republicans were going with this and doubling down on it. Are you better off in 2024 than you were in 2020? And most economists would say, well, fuck no, you weren't. Like, so how? That's where I'm curious to Pisco's point. Clearly, there has to be some sort of memory hole of what happened in 2020, which was virtually worse on at least 9 out of 10 metrics, right? Where did that confusion come in, or that disconnect, that dissonance? Because so many people are like, actually, yeah, by comparison to 2024, 2020 at the height of COVID was actually kind of a cakewalk.
So I think there's two important things. Number one is that what kickstarted Biden's decline, right? Like Afghanistan, but then what compounded it was the Delta variant for COVID, which made people think, hey, you promised this would be over. What the hell, man? And then inflation got really, really bad. That built the fuse. That built the firecrackers. That really laid the TNT out. And then after that, everyone was pissed. And now things may start to improve. But one of the things we find in elections is that like the first 2 years of GDP and the first 3 years of GDP for a president are actually incredibly important, because that's what allows perception to bake in. After that, you're trying to change people's perceptions. And even if the fourth year's economy is good, they're already pissed off. And
what
then
about Reagan? Can you just say, that's very interesting you said that. I always hear, maybe I'm wrong about this, that Reagan had, he started off with a period of economic recession, and he didn't really
inherit
have
it from President Carter. Yeah.
Right. So can you say more about that? Or are you saying that maybe it's a different situation because it's like Obama, where he kind of inherits the problem that's already there?
No. This is a great one. Okay. So the real story with Reagan is this, right? In 1980, he inherited one of the worst economies that any president has ever inherited. And this was not something that the public would give the president a mulligan for, because with COVID, that was the one weird case where COVID actually was a massive boon incumbency-wise to governments everywhere. Because who did the American people blame for COVID? They blamed China.
China, yeah.
Right? They saw Trump give stimulus checks, and they're like, the Chinese people did this, or the Chinese government did this, and they started blaming them. That was the median voter in America. COVID gave a huge incumbency bump as people rallied around the flag. And people felt that the economy before COVID, which again, they gave Trump a mulligan for in terms of its cause, the economy before COVID was one of the strongest economies in American history. The economy that Ronald Reagan inherited was one of the worst in recent American history. By 1984, the economy that Reagan was presiding over was the best in American history. And so the delta between what Reagan took power with and what he was running on in 1984 was so astronomically wide that, yeah, he had some pretty terrible first 2 years. But by 84, the economy was so good that, yeah, he was able to actually
get over that hump, right?
Right. And with Biden, the change was not that immense. Right. It's important to remember that the U.S. economy, a lot of it had actually recovered by like January 2020 or 2021. Right. Like we were not dealing with like Great Depression levels. The stock market crash had recovered by then. It was already surging again. We were not dealing with Jimmy Carter levels. That's something that they saw come up under Biden. Inflation did not start at 8% under Joe Biden. And then when it got better, people were like, yeah, but you're the one that started this mess.
The median family, their net wealth went up during 2020 because we had such a generous stimulus program in this country. But I want to pivot a little bit to like a couple different things. So like, first I want to get into sort of like the story of America right now. And I want to sort of pick your brain, Lakshya, on what you think the data show in terms of like the party's trajectories. Like, what do you think is going on with the country? And then also on a more granular level, like what's going on in each party. And then I want to get into electoral strategy, because this is something that we've had some disagreements on in the past on this podcast. And I wanted to get your sort of feedback. So first of all, why don't you tell me about like what do you think is happening in this country right now? Like, what do you make of the trends from 2024? Do you think these are sticky trends? Yeah, just your general thoughts.
Yeah, I think you could write a whole novel on inaccuracies about people trying to project trends forever. Do you remember 2020 when people said, hey, blue Texas is coming? It's gotten bluer for 3 cycles straight. Now we're left with Texas at R+14. Wonderful. Why do we get here? Right? So no, I don't think trends are sticky. I think what happened is people respond to material reality and information flows downstream of that. So my take is that what's happening in this country is that people were pissed off under Biden, and people wanted price relief because prices got really, really high. And now people are pissed off under Trump because prices have stayed really high. And instead of doing anything about it, he's played footsie with 1930s trade policy. And so as a result, you're seeing Trump's cost of living numbers be worse than any Republican president in modern history, because he has done absolutely nothing in people's view to help that. He's only compounded the problems that they faced.
Lakshya, on that point, just real quick, and I've heard this, I think it was Harry Enton who did this, maybe you can confirm that I'm not crazy, that currently Trump's approval rating on inflation is worse or as bad with independents as it ever was under President Biden.
That is correct. That is entirely correct. Okay. Notice that in this conversation, as I've talked about the failures that the American people saw under President Biden, Nowhere have I said that Trump 2025 is doing any better.
No. I hear you, but that's validation. That's encouraging to me because the four of us here, to one extent or another, believe that Trump is graded on a curve by the American people. So we're starting to see some data indicating that no, they're just as pissed off with him about inflation as they were with Biden. That's
Wait,
why
I want to stick on that because you just said he's not. You don't think he is graded on a curve. Could you get into that? Because that's like a consensus here.
Yeah.
No, I think Trump is, to the extent that he's graded on a curve, you would say it's for the scandals that everyone else would be like, oh, that would end my career, right? Like the whole Access Hollywood tape is one thing, but then like the whole sharks and God knows what else he talked about at the rally, that would have been treated as like a campaign ender.
Hannibal Lecter. Yeah.
Right? Like hey, Herschel Walker, his entire campaign was like dogged by accusations of, well, not accusations, the reality of this guy is actually crazy, right? Like the whole
Mark Robinson in North Carolina.
That Obama's best line was, you know, he had a great debate about, am I a vampire or a werewolf? And I had the same debate when I was 7. And that's the type of thing which Trump is excused from, because people are like, he's not a politician. He's kind of out there. He's kind of funny. I don't care.
That's what we mean. So you're saying they don't grade him on a curve for like the bread and butter issues that affect their daily lives.
Exactly. People are willing. So what Trump has discovered, in a sense, I like to say quote unquote discovered, but it's always been true, is that people are willing to excuse a lot if they think you're making their lives better.
Right.
And that is why Donald Trump, despite being weaker than a generic Republican, it is important to note this, he consistently underruns other Republicans. He does worse in polling than folks like Nikki Haley. But people do think that under his presidency, their lives got better up until what they viewed as the Chinese caused COVID. That's what the average American thinks. And so now this time around, they're not seeing that. And why you saw the Epstein files blow up is because Trump was using a lot of goodwill to weather those cultural scandals because people thought he's making my life better. Now, if he's not making your life better and you have a ton of chaos, what the hell is there that you're there for?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't think that he completely breaks the rules of gravity altogether? He's not unlocked the matrix code, even if he has some inherent advantages. So I have one point there to make on Trump, because you say he's not graded on a curve, and you say like, well, what could Biden have done to undo this like 8% inflation, and that there was this trend in 2020 of an incumbency advantage across the country, and but the whole point, right? That wasn't enough for Trump, you know, and notwithstanding the fact that there was an incumbency advantage in 2020 that you're pointing to, Trump lost. He outperformed what people would think, but like Trump is in a sense you know, as between the economy that you're saying that he was going to get credit for, that people's wealth was increasing, they weren't blaming him for the pandemic. How come he was undone in 2020 then? And is that an example that, sorry, 2020 he was Trump was undone, right? Trump lost. Why is it that in that election, when the factors arguably by your analysis are in his favor, that people nonetheless went against that advantage and picked Biden in that context?
So two things, right? It's important to remember Trump was not starting with a very high base of support. He started having lost the popular vote by 2 points to Hillary Clinton. He won because the Electoral College was in his favor. That was 2016. 2020 came around, he lost by 4.5. He actually lost 2 points of ground from 2016. And I want to note here that this is after a series of scandals that chipped away at every base of support that he had. First, you had the whole impeachment thing with Zelensky, which people did see as a, like, you should impeach him for that. Like, the public did not say, hey, don't impeach the guy. They were like, actually, that's kind of deserved.
Like
hey,
51%? What are we talking about? Like, are we saying the bare majority?
51%, but that's still something, right? Like, Bill Clinton's impeachment was very deeply underwater.
So was President Biden. So wasn't the polling around Biden's potential impeachment this last year? I don't think it ever got any popular support.
People didn't think that was something you could impeach a president over. Like, being old is not a crime.
It was the Hunter Biden thing. That was the long-standing rumors of impeachment. From House Republicans. I never saw a poll where even that got popular support.
No, exactly. Because again, right, like, a president has to be really unpopular to have impeachment levels, like to have people supporting his impeachment. And what's more, I said that the public didn't blame Trump for COVID, but they did blame him for his handling of it. They did blame him for a lot of things that he did in 2020, right? Like they blamed him a lot for handling COVID in the way that he did, which cost him among seniors, right? In terms of the whole corruption angle that really brought him down. And Trump was not shy on controversies or chaos or turnover in the first year. And Biden was a good candidate for 2020. I want to be clear on that. The Biden of 2024 is very different from the Biden of 2020. The Biden of 2020 was completely different. And he was someone that the electorate liked and trusted and said, you know, wasn't down with Hillary, but I do like this Joe Biden guy. And, you know, I trust him. I know he's a middle of the road dude. That's what they like. So basically to your point, like the reason it was undone in 2020 was because Trump really was the guy in power and he made a lot of mistakes. In 24, they were judging Trump as the alternative and Biden as the guy in power.
Making mistakes.
Biden, exactly.
Okay.
When you're out of power, you're out of sight, out of mind. You are the alternative. It is a referendum on the president. That's what happened here.
So let's get into the pressing issue here, because what everyone's talking about right now is the Democrats' historically low numbers. So I want you to sort of like walk us through what you think the data show on that. What do you think of the current narratives that are being espoused? And then we can get into the sort of differences that we've had here on the podcast in terms of electoral strategy.
Sure. I think broadly the data just shows that Democrats don't like Democrats. It's like, that's the number one thing. I mean, like, this is the first time in modern history that the Democratic Party's favorables have been underwater with Democratic voters. Now, one thing to note here is that this is not saying that Democrats are worse off among independents than the Republicans are. That's not true. And Democrats still lead the generic ballot. Democrats still win the national vote if the election was held today. What's happened is a bunch of people who have made politics their obsession and their life. And we are not exempt from that.
Not us. Not
So
us.
I was raising my hand like, Lakshya, damn, calling us out here. Yeah.
They
It's an
talk
intervention
shit. Have talk
to the
shit.
audience. This is actually an intervention that Lakshya is hosting for us. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, but they absolutely are done with the Democratic Party's current leadership because they say you keep losing. Now, keep losing is kind of a funny term for losing one election by 2%, but
After 3 successful election cycles.
yes, but
And Lakshya, to be clear, you will be happy because all 4 of us, despite our varied frustrations with the Democratic Party, make it a point to emphasize on our show and our respective channels that this idea that the Democratic Party is just, that we're just losers and that we can't win elections is fucking dumb. We beat Trump in 2018 in the midterms. We beat him in 2020, the 2021 Senate runoffs. We dominated the 2023 off-year elections. Like, so you'll be happy to know that we make
agree with
that
that,
point.
Josiah. And I agree with that, Josiah. I don't think that we're perennial losers and never made that point. I don't deny that some people probably think that right now, given the magnitude of the loss in 2024. So I'm not denying what Lakshya's saying at all. But I count myself among the people right now who disapproves of party leadership in the Democratic Party. And the reason I think that is because I think that the people who are leading the party are incompetent. But still, if you were to give me, a choice as between any generic Democrat, generic Republican, I would not even hesitate to put the Democrat there. And, So is that what's going on here? Is that it's just this whole Democratic infighting? And is that easily fixable by changing the people in charge?
yeah, I mean, what's happened is the Democratic electorate has decided you guys have been in power for God knows how long. You're old enough to have sat behind Jesus Christ in 3rd grade. Like at this point, we want someone new and we want new ideas because we blame you for getting this guy back in power because you said he's an existential threat to reality. You said you would do everything possible. And now you're passing his CR. You're passing his budget bill. You're doing all types of things, voting for his nominees. You're doing the types of things like confirming Marco Rubio by a 99-0 vote.
It's crazy.
Really inconsistent with how you behaved. So did you just sell us a false bag of goods? Do you not believe what you said? What did you do? So what's happened here is the Democrats have sold their voters a bag of goods that didn't exist. And now the chickens are coming home to roost, and they're like, whoa, hang on. I didn't think this would ever come for me. Like, I never thought the leopards would eat my face, that type of thing. And so I don't look at this in the terms of, hey, Democrats are screwed forever and always. I actually have said, I think Democrats have a really high turnout coalition. These are people who score like 9s and 10s on partisanship and turnout scores. They will vote, and they will vote for the Democrat. And I think when push comes to shove, Democrats handily win the 26 midterms in terms of the popular vote. But I do not think that the Democratic Party as it is going to emerge from the 26 midterms looking quite like it does today. I think voters have made it clear, the Democratic voters have made it clear that they want a different face, that they want a different approach, that they want more of a fight. And how that happens, I'm not sure, but I don't think leadership can currently turn it around because they're too far up the creek and have realized that they're stranded. And now it's a question of damage limitation, because let's put it this way, right? Like, why was Zoran Mamdani the guy that emerged as the anti-Cuomo candidate? Why was it not Brad Lander, the guy who fit every single technocratic bill? Why was it Zoran? It's because Zoran offered something so radically different, so completely unique and new, that they were like, you know what, like, this is the guy we want to run against Cuomo. This is the guy we trust over Andrew Cuomo. That's who they consolidated behind. Yeah, Cuomo had bad negatives, but why was it Zoran that surged up? And to me, that is indicative of what's happening with the party, because the party slowly has moved more and more and more to the left in terms of its voters. Its politicians
Haven't changed.
Its politicians have mostly approached 24. Yeah, they may have gotten more liberal in what they proposed in 2024 compared to 2015 or 2016, but the voters are much more liberal now than they were in 2024.
So, so we have another Joe Biden moment then, don't we? I mean, isn't this another moment of, well, you just said we're up Shit's Creek without a paddle, and they're too far gone for them to ever have any kind of comeback. So isn't this another Joe Biden moment? Don't we need to be calling on Schumer at all to step down?
We need some George Clooney op-eds ASAP.
I mean, I've said, I think it's time for Schumer to go. I don't actually think Schumer's done anything wrong in terms of helping Democrats stay in power, and here's why. By not having a government shutdown, you made all of the people who are going to vote in 2026 very mad. But the average person is not pissed off at the government shutting down now. And so they can be mad at Trump for a whole bunch of different stuff, and Democrats don't even give you the lane to attack them on shutting down the government. But that's also great for Democrats because it gives people another excuse to throw out Schumer. And Schumer is so confidently and so concretely associated with the old guard that I think it's time for him to go, because whether or not it's fair, what happens when a football team loses a game in extra time that they should have won and then lose again and lose again and lose again?
Yep.
You sack the manager. It may not be fair, but you sack the manager.
You said something just.
No,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Let Economo jump in here.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I think it helps to, because this is a great moment to kind of pivot into what Hutch was talking about, the general electoral strategy going forward. And I guess I'll do my best to, I'll at least summarize like my position. And I don't know how representative, I think we all have kind of slightly different perspectives. Obviously Hutch and I might be like the farthest apart. We represent like the universe of the podcast, I guess. And so one of my theories for like why the Democrats are so unpopular, number one, is on the margin. I think on the margin, things like your platform and like candidate charisma, the demographic like type of candidate that you propose, like I think these things like on the margin make a difference. You know, maybe they result in plus or minus between like 1 in 3 to 5% or something like that of the vote or something like that, right? Like your actual platform you run on and your vibes and stuff like that. I think that most of election results are based on these macroeconomic, like macro factors that aren't necessarily in your control. Like Kamala probably lost mostly for the reasons that you said: inflation, Biden's poor legacy, you could say like proto legacy at the time. And it's hard to say that if she ran like an optimal messaging or platform campaign that she still ends up winning. But I think that she does, like,
she would have won.
Well, right, because you have like so many different state level races that are pretty close, and it's probably the case that if you just add in like 2% of the vote in all these states, she might end up actually winning. Maybe she still loses the popular vote, which would be the most hilarious outcome. But um, my general theory of going forward is that I think what people want out of their Democrats is loud vocal voices offering what I think to be like simple and more broad-based policies, right? So that might mean instead of like Kamala's proposal to expand or Medicare to the elderly, it might look like saying we're going to let everyone buy into Medicare, right? Instead of saying I'm going to build 3 million new houses, just say you're going to build 20 million new houses, right? Just like bigger numbers, more bold, kind of simple messaging. And that's not necessarily moderate or progressive, but I think that Democrats, my theory, generally speaking, is that over time, I feel like Democrats have kind of become so scared to step out on the plank on essentially any issues that they end up coming across as basically people who are kind of fundamentally feckless. And like you said, not necessarily the change agents that you would want out of your candidates. And I do happen to, the last thing, I'm sorry. Yeah. The last thing that I'll say is that I do happen to think that progressives are more likely to fit that mold, but it's not necessarily a moderate versus progressive issue. That's kind of my theory or my like proposal going forward. And I guess Hutch, I'd love for you to give your perspective, and then Lakshya can kind of like give his stance, I guess.
My perspective is that the American voters play an essential role in what kind of platform the candidate and eventual president can deliver. And if you deliver a 50-50 Senate, you should temper your expectations accordingly. This is not going to be a presidency that's going to deliver like Medicare for all or single payer. And so I think this is like part of the calculation that is just completely missing in the discourse.
Can you clarify when you say temper, it's the politicians who should temper or the voters who should temper?
The voters
Yeah,
are
good luck with that.
What'd you say?
Good luck with that.
No. This is why I don't run political strategy. I'm not saying you should run on a platform of like fucking voters are pretty stupid sometimes, but I'm just making my own observation. But I guess if we can just sort of summarize the disconnect here and just kind of get to the meat of things, is that Econoboy, Pisco, and I think to a lesser extent even Josiah, they favor a policy of we should be trying to primary any elected politician that do not meet a sort of kind of purity test. And Econoboy had for example, he thinks that we should try to primary anyone who opposes abolishing the filibuster, or he could give you a couple other policies or whatever. What is your general sense of like what would be the best thing for the party to do right now? How much of it is the platform and messaging? How much of it is just focusing on things like candidate strength? Do you endorse their policy of like ruthless primary strategy?
Okay, what year are we talking about? 26 or 28?
26, 28.
Or give us both. Give us both.
Moving forward.
Yeah, give us
I think
both.
for 26, all of this is a hilariously pointless conversation in a lot of ways, because here's why. Regardless of what people think, the 2026 elections are mostly going to be a referendum on Donald Trump. And so to the extent that, candidate image matters, the intra-party strategy doesn't really matter. The truth is the same as always, right? Like whoever's running is going to be viewed as, hey, I'm going to be a check on the president. If you can effectively appeal to the people in the middle who turn out more in the elections anyways, right? Like a lot of these, if you can effectively appeal to people in the middle and say like, I'm going to just, be a common sense guy, look at Donald Trump, look at how crazy he is, look at all the chaos, I'll bring some stability. For 26, that's a winning message because people are concerned with the immediate chaos going on right now. People do not enjoy tariff policy whiplashing every other minute, right?
Lakshya, can I get you to clarify here just something, just so we're really precise, or as precise as possible with our language? I take that to mean you're saying 26 is less about policy and more opposition to Trump. And you correct me if I'm wrong here, because my thinking is if we flip the House or the Senate, policy is irrelevant because he'll still control the White House. So we can't, we'll do this, and this for you. Is it we're going to check Trump, we're going to fuck him over? Like what is it? How would you pitch it?
No, I wouldn't talk about impeachment or anything like that, right? You're trying to just get a bunch of people you're going to have to flip some Trump voters. You're going to have to say like, look, I get that you voted for this guy. I don't quite think you signed up for all of this. If you elect me, I will work for policy wherever possible, but I will check his worst impulses. And that's like how people like Jared Golden won in 2018, right? This is how people like, this is really how like a bunch of blue dogs won in 2018. This is how a bunch of people like Mikey Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger came onto the scene in 2018. But with 28's a little bit different because you can't run the same faces. Well, maybe you can and win because, hey, Trump just ran again and won. But like in 28 against Vance, and it's almost certainly going to be against Vance, who I believe is a phenomenally weak Republican candidate, you need a fresh face. You need someone who can offer a different vision. Now, I'm very vocally and publicly from the moderate wing of the party. I have to say, though, what I've told other moderates who talk to me about this, like whether it's donors, whether it's politicians, is I'm like, hey, you know what? One thing at least that the left has right now is, despite doubling in and doubling down with like riding with Biden, these guys still like have the ability to portray like a clear, forceful message in a Democratic primary. And you guys talk about all types of tiny little details. And those are great for governing, and I agree with them. And those are great for winning over like swing voters who don't want someone too much to either side. But how are you going to win a Democratic primary? How are you going to win a factional battle for control in the party if you can't present any type of vision and you let yourself get jerked around like the New Democrats constantly do? And so, to me, in 28, I think the left is primed to surge. I think the left is primed to do a lot better than in 2020. And frankly, I think that if you ran the election in 2028, I think what's going to happen is Democrats are going to go more to the left than they are right now as a party. They're going to nominate someone who is significantly more liberal than, Hillary 2016 was, or Obama 2012, or even Kamala Harris 2024. And then I think they could still win because, again, like macroeconomic conditions matter so much, and JD Vance is a really bad candidate. But all of these things about like Democrats saying, oh, we need the moderates to assert control of the party. I'm telling you, as a moderate, I don't see it. What I see happening is in 12 to 15 critical red races, we're going to run people that say, oh my God, screw these guys. I'm not endorsing AOC for president. Fine, go ahead. Great. Good for you. And then you're probably going to get someone a lot closer to AOC as a nominee. And then you're going to have to deal with, how do we get her to win an election? But that's what I think is going to happen.
So let's fast forward the clock a little bit and get to the particular example that was the source of like so much argument. Go ahead.
I just wanted to interrogate that a little bit.
Same.
So shut the fuck up, Hutch. No, I'm just kidding. But
it's your birthday.
No,
It's his birthday. We can't tell him that. Jesus, that's fucking rude.
6 times 7 years old. That's a big deal. Okay, on the multiplication table. But anyway, so Lakshya, so it almost sounds like what you're saying is that descriptively, my kind of approach is probably what is going to work in the primaries coming up, right? That people kind of want these like more bold, like a little bit more broad-based, more like, you could say like distinctive messages like Mamdani, not exactly like Mamdani, but just, like distributed sense, right? But you're saying in the general election, that'll present kind of a new challenge because at least for the last 20 years, Democrats historically have kind of, well, not even like the last like 30 years, Democrats have pretty much ran more moderate candidates on the national level. And it'll be, I guess, kind of a tug in the party, similar to how, like, for instance, when Bernie, a lot of analysts were saying that Bernie was going to become the nominee after he won Nevada before Super Tuesday. And you saw a whole lot of people, you started to see like some of this rhetoric kind of peek through where a bunch of moderates, it was almost like when Trump was running away with it in 2016, like, I'm not the biggest fan of Bernie, but, like, I expect to challenge him and, I will work constructive. You started to see some of that rhetoric kind of peek through. Is that a good summary of what your general vibe is?
Kind of. So here's the thing. I think AOC in specific is a little bit too well defined in terms of policy to really pull this strategy off effectively. But I want to take you guys back to Bernie 2016. I've actually said the vote that I regret most in my life was voting for Hillary in 2016 over Bernie. And this is surprising to a lot of people that know me, because mostly they know me as someone saying like, what the hell, the left wing of the party is really stupid. But I firmly believe that Bernie Sanders would have won 2016.
Hell yeah! Whoa!
Lakshya!
So I'm vindicated. The polling guy agrees with me.
That's all the time. That's all the time we have for
victory.
today.
Total
Thank you for this
complete.
episode
Thank
of
you
Lib
so
and
much,
Learn.
guys. We're outta
Thank you.
here.
Thank you. Yeah. All right, everybody.
I-
Call it.
Red is a cherry right now.
I
Let's-
asked
Somebody fucking clip this. I want it clipped and spammed everywhere.
I asked you to come on to confirm my fucking priors, not this. Whatever
Lakshya,
this is.
he was in the group chat. He was saying, just wait till Lakshya gets on the show, and he's gonna fucking,
He's
Yeah,
like,
really
Lakshya's
put
gonna
you
make
guys
you
to it."
bite the
Bernie
curb.
would have won. It's
I
official.
think Hutch is gonna like what's about to come after this.
No, wait a
Okay,
minute. We
all
just
right,
ended the
all right,
fucking
yeah,
stream.
no,
What are you
no,
talking about, Lakshya? What are you
Let's
talking
over
about?
now.
We just ended it.
Shut up. Let him talk. Go ahead.
So look, here's the thing, right? Like, why was Bernie 2016 a stronger candidate, I believe, than Hillary? Bernie 2020 was not. I think Bernie 2020 was weaker than Biden. I think any other candidate other than Klobuchar and Biden probably would have lost 2020. But Bernie 2016 was not Bernie 2020. Now, here's what happens, right? I don't think the left wing of the party is inherently unelectable. I think they've chosen to become pretty suboptimal as an electoral wing because they've made a series of choices to go away from what the left wing of politics once stood for, which was economic and material improvement in people's lives, over a lot of virtue signaling, a lot of rhetorical signaling, and a lot of things which broadly people weren't down for. But Bernie 2016 was very much about punching against the system. He was very much about recognizing the system is broken. I know that none of us have answers, but here are mine, and I think they're a lot better than whatever the hell you've gotten for the last 30 years. That's why Bernie 2016 was polling so well. That's why Bernie 2016 found a lane against, it should be said, a juggernaut in Democratic politics, Hillary Clinton, right? Like, there is no reason that Bernie, a backbencher, should have gotten 40% in a primary against Hillary fucking Clinton. But why did that happen? It's because the left wing of the party, when they focus pretty exclusively on economics and like left-wing economics, and Bernie was actually kind of anti-immigration, which is pretty interesting. He was very much a libertarian on guns in a lot of ways compared to what he is now. That's the
He opposed H-1B visas and stuff like that, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
That's the type of left that actually is like pretty electorally potent. And that could work, I think. Like, I think if a left-wing candidate came up and they focused exclusively on cost of living, I don't even know how much they have to
Like
change.
Mamdani's recent campaign.
Yeah, like I probably would say Zoran's campaign, but like with a bit less talk about the social issues, even a bit less, like that he had kind of self-inflicted on himself. But importantly, Zoran's campaign was really a good definition of this because it was laser focused on cost of living, like laser focused on cost of living. That's what makes the left powerful in America. That's what makes the left wing better electorally, because there's a much bigger base of support for left-wing economic policies than there is for left-wing candidates. And part of the reason for that is because the left-wing candidates have let themselves get defined by a whole bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with why they search. Now, I think that could work. And I think the Blue Dogs approach of like overall general moderation and economic moderation, I think that could work too. Both of those are punching against the system and punching against the system hard. I don't think AOC can effectively punch against the system because to many people by now, she is the system. But I think a left-wing candidate could come on board, and I think a left-wing candidate could exploit that.
Can you say more about that? AOC is the system. What do you mean by that?
And could you also clarify if you think that a moderate candidate, are there any moderate candidates in the House or the Senate that you think would be able to pitch themselves as more anti-institutionalist, more anti-system than AOC? Because you seem to suggest that maybe there were some moderates, some blue dogs who could better position themselves as opponents of the system than AOC.
So there's two. I think this guy isn't particularly moderate, but I think John Ossoff. And because Ossoff has made anti-corruption his number one angle. And that's a really good way of going against the system. Ossoff's number one thing is anti-corruption, anti-corruption, anti-corruption.
Similar to Chris Murphy, but a little bit more Riz on Ossoff.
Yeah, a lot more. But also, Ossoff has been consistent. That's been the number one thing he's focused on. Murphy is an everything bagel of liberalism, and he's never really done super well electorally. Ossoff, it's important to remember that beating Perdue was really difficult. A lot of people didn't want to run against Perdue because they thought he'd just win. And so the thing with Ossoff is that he's picked a clear lane and he's defined it. Part of the reason I'm bullish on him is because my gut tells me that there's no way this guy has a juice. And my gut is always wrong. But,
So
I think Ossoff,
Jews for the presidency or Jews for his reelection in the Senate?
presidency, but I think it'll be re-election. And then I think Gallego is another one. I think that one's a little bit harder, but Gallego's made it a very public point to just like flip the middle finger to everyone involved. Fetterman, I don't think has a chance of winning his primary in 28. So, well, he has a chance. I don't think he's going to. So I don't even think that's a point to debate. I don't know why people keep bringing him up as a 28 candidate. I think you should be thinking about, is he going to lose?
I don't even know if he'll run for re-election. He seems like he actively like hates being a senator. He's like, fucking, I gotta be up at this fucking vote all night. Sick of it.
His own wife in an interview just a couple days ago, she gave an interview and said something remarkable. It's like the interviewer asked her, would you support your husband if he ran for president? And I can't remember how she answered, but it was like, no, I would not support that. I would not be happy. Which is crazy. Like,
that's an awkward
really
dinner
crazy
conversation.
Yeah.
I've got to just point out here, okay? And Lakshya, you're a hanger on to this conversation. Obviously, I feel like Lakshya is 100% agreeing with almost everything that I've said about electoral strategy. Shut the fuck up, really quick, Judge. I'm so fucking antsy to take this victory lap. God damn it, Hutch. Okay, let me just say one thing.
Here's where it ends, though.
Let me just say one thing. Okay, I have literally on this podcast, and I believe in writing, said word for word, I like AOC the best, but maybe John Ossoff is probably the most optimal.
That's right. You've been talking about him for months.
And I've also said it was because he focuses so much on. Fuck you, Hutch! I will not take any more lectures from you about electoral. I'm sorry. Okay,
I always tell my chat, I think you're a super smart guy and you have plenty of good takes. Here's where I think.
I think Lakshya, super smart guy as well. He's agreeing with what I've been saying this whole time.
Here. Let me engineer some conflict. Lakshya, don't fucking let me down on this one, okay? Because I got a lot riding on this right now, okay?
Hutch is on the ropes for the people watching this.
Let's play out. And I don't even disagree with anything they've said. I maybe the Bernie thing in 2016, but I honestly trust his opinion more than my own gut. Here's where I want to get to where I think the divide is. Okay, so as far as the primary process and how that plays out in 2026 and 2028, quite frankly, the voters will decide what candidates they think are optimal. And so, we're not talking about like a top-down party strategy here. We're talking about like a primary process. Once we get to, let's fast forward, it's January 20th, 2029, and it's President AOC, and she's got 55 Senate votes. She's got 55 Senate Democrats. And let's say she puts forth her agenda, and she's got 6 or 7 senators that are kind of waffling on some of the new Green Deal stuff and, getting rid of the filibuster and blah, 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 blah. Econoboy in that spot thinks that AOC should get in front of a podium and announce
oh my God.
primary challengers, that she's going to back primary challengers to all these different senators that don't support specific provisions of her bill. I don't want to mischaracterize what he has to say. So if he wants to articulate his in a way that's has more clarity, that's fine.
My point, Lakshya, is that I think one of the ways that I've phrased it in the past is that I feel like the Democrats have a bad political economy, basically. That I think that they tend to propose systems that are narrow in their base, and they're also inefficient in how they're administered. And that also this goes all the way back to Clinton's welfare reform in the 90s, right? Where it's he basically, in a number of ways, destroyed the welfare state in the country, much more than Ronald Reagan or George H.W. Bush did at the time, even George W. Bush, Trump. Clinton cut the welfare state and made it so administratively inefficient that it made the interactions with the welfare state also very, very terrible for a lot of people who actually needed it. And I think that kind of is emblematic of what I call a poor political economy, because by making a system worse, a system that typically Democratic voters are in favor of, more welfare benefits on the margin, this kind of thing. It makes it easier for Republicans to come in and cut those very same systems because they've made them worse. And so I say all that to say that one of the reasons why I take the filibuster to be like a stubborn thing that we should be willing to primary Democrats are over, whether it's moderate or progressive Democrats, is that by making it so difficult to pass all of the policies that Democrats run on, things like comprehensive immigration reform, protecting abortion rights, like abortion rights was and still is a pretty seemingly a big wedge issue in politics, but we can't actually do anything about it because of the filibuster. You can argue because of the Supreme Court, but that's another thing, that any Supreme Court reform, it's because of the filibuster, that it is so sufficiently like bottlenecking for the Democrats' ability to do anything with their platform that it's important for Democrats to get rid of the filibuster to, at the very least, try and engender a confidence in the American people that, hey, if you vote for Democrats, there's like a credible ability for Democrats to do the substantial portion of their platform.
Can I just add that real quick? Because I just want to add real quick. For long-term strategy, for the Democrats, about big picture overall in the long term, and this is what I'm fearful of, because some of the things you're saying, I'm not saying I disagree with you, because I think a lot of them are prognoses and descriptive, but I'm concerned that the Democrats need to plan for a situation post-Trump. They have to define themselves in a way that doesn't just rely on Trump, because Trump's going to be gone in a few years, probably, most likely. I don't think the Republicans are planning for the post-Trump victory. They're just kind of lulling into the J.D. Vance candidacy potentially. And so I agree with Econoboy that some more consideration needs to be done. And it's kind of like an abundance pill to be like, Democrats need to do things. They do things faster. And that's the only way they can engender long-term gains. What do you think?
I think both of you are talking on an axis that is completely different from what actually wins elections. You were talking on policy, and you can argue, you can make those good arguments for policy all you want. But functionally, if we're talking about public opinion, one of the most ironclad rules in American politics is that the more the president talks about something, the less popular it becomes. And this is just observed over and over and over again. And so if you're trying to spend political capital, you're trying to spend political capital on convincing members and senators and really representatives of your own party to vote for something. But when you spend that political capital, you do so recognizing that you are getting your base to pressure that senator, not doing it because you think it'll help your party in a general election. You're doing it because you think it's good policy, and you're doing it because you think, I need this policy passed. I know my base stands with me. I know they stand with the president over Senator Steve, racist, what's his name, from Ohio. And you're going to say, like, that's what I'm going to stick with. Okay. So that's the angle.
Can you address the issue of like, the issue I'm talking about specifically? So, for example, in abundance, Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson talk about the problem that we are not able to get shit done, and for that reason, like, we lose elections, and they put all this extra shut in the Biden bills, and they don't like make things more speedy. Isn't that a concern electorally, not just in terms of policy, electorally, if Democrats are unable to do things to show that that they have the confidence of the people?
Okay, so most of what a president can immediately implement doesn't necessarily, like especially in terms of the economic policies you guys are talking about, those effects aren't necessarily going to be shown right away unless you're in a position where those policies have the political capital to be implemented quickly right away. I'll give you an example, the Great Depression, right? People always bring that up and they say, oh, look at the New Deal. That was something where the American people really rewarded FDR for what he did. Okay, the Great Depression had 25% unemployment. If we get to that level, all the rules of political gravity are out the window. We are playing by a whole new set of rules. Then you're talking about, is Kentucky going to be D+5 or D+15? But that's not the situation we're in right now. And so if you're talking about deliverism, right, like the types of policies that you're talking about, when they get passed, they're not going to be enough to help you weather the out of power penalty in a midterm, because those policies have much more of a longer term effect on a big giant machine.
Well, Lakshya, just to interject.
Don't interrupt him.
No, because I think we're to some degree missing the boat here. Is that I would 100% agree with everything that you just said, but that's kind of one of the points that I've made is that this is a long-term strategy, right? Like in the long run, I feel like as Democrats are able to actually like, let's just say that the Democrats pass like a huge healthcare reform, Medicaid expansion, or not Medicaid, like healthcare consolidation, Medicare public option becomes a thing. And let's say that, like every fucking policy, it's like grandfathered in and like everyone's finally eligible in like 2031 or something like that, right? Well, then let's just say whatever, we take a bath in 2032 and we lose that election. Well, by the time like 2033, 2034, 2035 rolls around, Democrats, like a lot of other parties in a lot of other countries can do, they can look back and say, who's the one that achieved universal healthcare coverage? What Medicare cover or what medical coverage do you have right now? If you raise your hand, who's on Medicare right now? Oh, look at that. That's 60% of the crowd right now. That was the Democrats that did that. And we're only able to do, why are your abortion rights protected? Why do we have a liberal and orderly immigration process? You get what I'm saying? It's a long-term project.
But what precedent exists for this? LBJ passed Medicare. He had Medicaid. He had the Voting Rights Act, right? The Voting Rights Act changed the electorate. That's the one thing that you can say helped electorally, because that changed the electorate and that got a whole bunch of new voters in. But other than that, what helped LBJ? You could say Vietnam nerfed him. Okay, fine. How did Obamacare end up helping the Democrats by itself? No, Obamacare helped the Democrats when Trump tried to undo it. But that's saying we set up a good policy system. People like the system. And then when other people try to come after the new system, then it helps us. Now, that's a different argument than saying we're going to set something up and we'll be rewarded for that thing existing. You're only going to be rewarded once they try to undo it.
No. Yeah, right. But Lakshya, that's one of my fundamental points, right? Is that when you set up these systems and the systems themselves are like good, proven, there's a lot of empirical examples, like you have an expectation that these systems would work well, that's exactly right. That is what you'd see. Like you'd see eventually that when the next conservative government takes office, and you see this across the world with different universal healthcare systems and welfare states and expansions of union power and things like that, that conservatives take office in those countries. There's conservatives that win power in the Nordic countries and in Australia and in Canada and, and across time and cultures and stages of development. But all of those parties have a fundamental difficulty getting rid of those systems because they work so well and they're so popular. And the last thing that I'll say is that there's also clearly a brand. It's on the margin. I'm not going to say that this is some wild every Labor Party has a 75% approval rating. But there is clearly a brand equity to take in the UK, the Labour Party being willing to say, we started, fee-free university, we founded the fucking NHS system, we did all these like 100 different institutional arrangements that still exist to this day and have like an 85% approval rating. I think that's a powerful message. The Democrats cannot even obtain that message because they're unwilling to do filibuster reform, because they can't get any of their policies passed without filibuster reform.
Yeah, in other words, I guess for me, where I'm trying to like thread the needle here is what Econoboy seems to be saying is unless Democrats are willing as a party to run on these like procedural reforms, we will never have the ability to create these policies, which eventually, if not in the next election cycle, like Obamacare, you're right, we took a bath in the next midterms.
Or the one after. Maybe it does take 10 years.
But eventually, that creating that policy and conservatives' reflexive urge to take it down, which seems to manifest quite a bit, rewards the Democrats. But none of that can happen unless we're willing to Econoboy's point, say everybody's got to be willing to kill the filibuster as soon as we get 51 votes in the Senate.
It sounds like what you guys are saying is basically we should pass good policy because it's good policy and because we know the Republicans are freaks that will end up trying to harm it anyways. And then once they touch it, then they've touched the stove. Now,
it's more to that, though, because they're not just saying we should pass this policy. They're saying we need to be able, the party leadership, the president, the Democratic president should be willing to go to war with the moderate elected Democrats who oppose parts of their agenda.
Well, he may not agree with that. I'm curious if he'll just like even grant the first part, if he like, because he was starting to say, he was starting to like recap.
I want to hear what he has to say. Yeah.
Oh. And then we can get to whether it's worth the war. So I'm sorry, Lakshya, can you continue what you were saying?
Yeah. So basically, right, like I think the argument fundamentally comes down to pass good policy and let the chips fall where they may. And generally speaking, you guys are saying they will end up falling in our favor, because when good policy passes, the nation state improves, and then the Republicans come in, they want to change it, and they'll be able to harness some backlash. But when they try to change it, they won't be able to, and we can ride that back to victory. Yeah. That's what you guys are saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, that's what they're saying. But yeah.
Okay. Now, I don't think you're going to get anyone to disagree with the fact that good policy is good to pass. I don't think you're going to get anyone to disagree with the fact that when you pass good policy, the other side, by reflexive partisan nature, often builds an entire campaign on undoing significant change that they then cannot deliver on. This much is not controversial. Not me nor Hutch. No one is going to disagree with that. Where we disagree, I think, is this. You guys are saying that the president needs to be able to go to war to get these things implemented. And what I'm saying is that functionally, any win from President AOC is going to require getting a senator in a state that is right of the nation to vote for filibuster reform or whatever. And those people, and almost certainly, by the way, just in current present reality, if Democrats win 2028, they're going to have 52 Senate seats, maybe 53, maybe 51, maybe 50, right? We're not talking about 56, 57 seats. We're talking about 51 to 53 Senate seats at best, okay? Unless someone here has a template for how to flip Alaska, Kansas, and Nebraska blue, in which case I listen to you for everything.
I'm working on it. I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
Functionally,
well, the Dems did have 48 people willing to vote for filibuster reform under Biden. I mean, the two holdouts.
Not to get rid of the filibuster. They were willing to do carve-outs.
But to carve it out is, I mean, at that point, who cares? If you're carving it out for legislation.
Hold on. You haven't addressed one functional critical point, which is this. The types of people President AOC, you're calling President AOC to go to war with publicly, those types of people know that they're in their general election, they answer to J.D. Vance's voters. They answer to Republican voters. And they know that no matter how hard a president can try, it's going to be really difficult for a president to justify going to war against her own party or his own party. And that when you do that, the most likely outcome is actually the president's party taking an image hit and the president taking an image hit, because now you can't even unite your own party around this, and your own party is saying this is ridiculous. Why are we passing this policy? And then people start fleeing, and all the rats start fleeing the sinking ship. And now you've crippled your presidency before it even starts. And that's why I think this approach of saying like, we're gonna like go to war with, Tanner.
Yeah, it's a straw man to say go to war. I mean, it's just not what we've proposed. Hutch says go to war because he thinks he says go to war because it's good for him to get clicks and to, I think, straw man the position that at least I have. I can't speak for everyone else. So we've specifically described, for example, I've specifically given examples to Hutch, and he knows this, where I'm not saying full on. President Biden gets out there and condemns Joe Manchin. He knows that I said this. He knows that I gave him examples, for example, of like the president going to, alternative news sites or to the real news and saying, this is why I think the policy is important. This is why I'm trying to get support. I respect my senators who are part of my caucus, but this is really important. And the Democrats should, the voters should let the candidates and the senators know what they think. That is not, I wouldn't describe that. And Hutch knows that was the example I gave. Would you describe that, Lakshya, just this one question, as going to war?
I actually think, okay, look, I know that we can talk about the definitions and they're important. Here's how I would describe it as. You are creating public tension and public conflict with a senator of your own party at a time when your majority is very slim. And to a lot of senators, that is considered not going to war, but it is really considered picking a fight. And
it's pressure. It is pressure. I agree with that. Is it your position that there should not be pressure?
Pressure privately. LBJ did not do a whole public pressure campaign on specific senators. LBJ, all of his pressure on specific senators was in private. Obama's pressure on specific senators was in private. Mm-hmm. If you're doing it in private, I want to emphasize that Manchin was open to filibuster reform. You can find a lot of anecdotes on this saying Manchin felt that the filibuster was important, but it did not supersede the right to vote. There was a Washington Post article on this. Biden and Schumer screwed that up. You can find evidence of that in the reporting. Biden and Schumer screwed that up. But the private pressure on Manchin, people lobbied for it a lot.
So wait a second. So it's your position that Manchin could have been convinced to do filibuster reform for the John Lewis voting, whatever the act was that was being
John
considered.
Lewis Voting Rights Act. Yeah.
Is that your position, Lakshya?
That is my position. He could have been convinced, and he expressed openness to it. If you look at the reporting on the topic, you can find public articles on Manchin and his private thinking, and he was amenable to it.
So it would be fair to characterize your opinion as you could have pressured Manchin to get a significant win for what Joe Biden wanted to do, that you could have pressured Joe Manchin.
But he's saying in private.
Okay. But at least, Hutch, would you acknowledge that what he is suggesting that Joe Biden could have pressured Joe Manchin, correct? That's what he's saying. But I just want to say, you are acknowledging that Lakshya is saying that you could have pressured Joe Manchin to get a significant piece of legislation through, correct?
I understand you're trying to take anyone you can get in this moment.
I'm just wondering if you just heard that and whether you agree.
This is a lover's quarrel between the four of us.
I just want to acknowledge. Did you hear him say that?
Yeah, and if I take him at his word, I believe him. But his whole point is to don't do it publicly. Like, don't hash these differences out publicly. So that's what he's saying.
Here's what I would say to that, because I feel like obviously I was characterized as wanting to go to war here. I take the going to war thing as like an ultimate consequence, right? I mean, obviously I don't think you should, like, as soon as somebody's like, right, like, you shouldn't begin, you shouldn't bring a gun to an argument, right? Like, obviously, at a certain point, you should try to do everything that you can privately. But I think that, one thing is, there is kind of a time limit with that regard. Like, I think that that's one thing that almost everybody recognized was a strategic failure of the Obama administration, was that they spent so long trying to get any fucking Republican to vote for the healthcare reforms. They wasted months and months and months, and probably, I'm sure there's books written, but there's probably fucking thousands of labor hours that they spent just trying to convince Republicans to vote on it. And the one thing that we talked about as well is that they included dozens of Republican amendments into Obamacare, just so they could say this is a bipartisan bill. Like, just one.
They didn't
Republican
include a single Republican amendment in the ACA. What are you talking about?
You're no, Hutch. I assure you, you're wrong on this. I think there was 40 Republican amendments to the final passed bill, Obamacare. Like original proposals or whatever. You'd have to go look at it as well. And even that, there were dozens of Democrats that voted against it in the House. The only reason I say that, though, is that I think that's typically understood to be like a waste of time from the Obama administration. And I think even Obama himself realizes that, yeah, he probably couldn't work with the Republicans as much as he wanted to. Now I'm talking about an inner caucus debate. But overall, I would agree that, like, yeah, you should use every, like, private and like tempered amount of pressure that you can.
And accountable. We were talking about that, right? So we were talking about both public and private. So, for example, people were saying, Joe Biden should have gone to Manchin and said it might threaten the DOJ, and that would be considered private. So I just want to be clear that we all agree on the panel that in our conversation previously, we were discussing both public and private pressure, correct?
For the people saying in the chat, like, oh, well, people were saying, oh, you should pressure Manchin publicly. I just have to be clear that that's because I understand that there was a significant amount of private, like, pressure and negotiation that they had already undertaken with Joe Manchin, right? So again, my ultimate position is I'm in part agreeing with Lakshya that, of course, you shouldn't just blow the fucking gasket off of negotiations as soon as somebody disagrees with you. But I do think at a certain point, when you've stalled out and said, well, fuck, like, I just simply cannot get these people to agree to get rid of the filibuster, to do, like, a lot of main parts of the Democratic platform, I think, yeah, like, that's when you start giving interviews. That's when you start, like, dialing up the public pressure. And eventually, if you have to say, I'm going to endorse a primary challenge for you because of you, Democrat, we can't get our platform passed. So it's just not acceptable.
So I would love to pick your brain, Lakshya, and, like, can we get into particulars of, like, how could that kind of a campaign, like a public pressure campaign, harm Democrats electorally? Can you kind of get into the weeds about, like, this state and that district, blah, 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 blah?
What it does is it sours independence on what the president is proposing. Because the more the president talks about a policy, the more the president drives up conflict about a policy, the less the public takes his side. And that's the critical insight here, which is that the bully pulpit that Theodore Roosevelt posited is not actually a thing that is going to work for legislation unless you are trying to get people from your own party to support the legislation, and unless those people have sufficient concerns about their own reelection to do that. Now, one thing that I want to point out again is that Senate terms are every 6 years. It is highly likely that the people that President AOC or whoever would be mad at aren't even up in 2030. So you're trying to pressure someone who isn't even going to be elected for another 4 years. So that's part of the issue right there. The other part is, and look, again, I'm not sure if this was on the Build Back Better or on the Voting Rights Act, but like Manchin was open to a lot of this stuff in private. There were a lot of substantive negotiations in private that kind of blew up, partly because the White House tried to do a whole bunch of weird things in public to signal pressure. I'll give you one for Build Back Better, right? Like for Build Back Better, they put his name on a letter when Manchin was like, please take it off. Why would you do that? What gain did you have from that? And this was emblematic of a lot of the failures that they had in negotiating. You don't realize that in an R+40 state, you are really trying to convince someone who answers to Donald Trump's voters and has to convince them. Now, you asked, where does it actually hurt Democrats? Where does it impact them and whatnot? I mean, it's a macro picture. It impacts people because they think, hey, the president's party isn't even supporting this, and the president is proposing a radical policy change, and they are arguing for radical policy change. I don't want radical policy change in this way. I don't want this radical change. What are we doing? And so it energizes the other party a lot. That's what Republicans did with Obamacare. It turns off the independents, and your own side is pissed off about the intra-party disunity and gets even more disincentivized to vote because you're the people in power, and why should they vote?
But before you mentioned that you weren't a fatalist with respect to the 2024 election, that even before the debate, even before the July, I think it was, or late June debate with Biden, that you weren't convinced that he was necessarily going to lose. What do you like? Cards did he leave on the table? What could he have done better to? Because this is a game of margins, you know. So if he did anything wrong, what did he do wrong? And is there anything that is the bully pulpit just a complete myth in your mind, that there's no use really to this kind of public signaling or looking like you're, quote, giving a shit, that there's no evidence to support the notion that looking like you're giving a shit or signaling to your base or signaling that you care more than you are is helpful electorally?
So by 24, the goose was kind of cooked for two reasons. But I think one big thing to cite is that Biden was viewed as impotent and incompetent by the American electorate because they didn't think that the guy could go to the bathroom unaccompanied. That was the biggest thing. What could Joe Biden have done about that? I'm not sure, because the answer generally involves a time machine. And
yeah.
Or all that adrenochrome that he's taking, you know.
He should have, yeah, he should have.
He needed to increase
that's the biggest
dosage.
thing. What could he have done differently? I don't know, be younger. If you're talking about, let's assume he was a president who was 55 years old and had these numbers, what could he have done differently? Now, that's a different conversation. And I think it would have had to started with something where your policies didn't turbocharge inflation even more. Like it is the case that the American Rescue Plan added to inflation. Now, it was still going to be high, but maybe it would have been 6 instead of 8. Now it added to inflation. Maybe you don't pass that. And maybe that's bad policy and you say, okay, I'm going to take a hit on bad policy so I don't charge more inflation. Okay, but you don't add to inflation and you don't run a campaign trying to raise the salience of economics at a time when your economic handling is 20 points underwater. That's what you don't do. And that's what he did.
That's interesting. So to clarify, that's interesting. So you know the conventional wisdom at the time and in the immediate aftermath during the election postmortems was the Democrats were not focused enough on the economy. Are you suggesting that that was kind of like a lost cause and they should have appealed to other issues?
No. Because Biden was not running.
So once he left, then Vice President Harris was right to run on the economy more.
Correct. And had Harris focused on an economically populist platform, I think she may have done better. Or had she run an economic platform in general,
Interesting.
populist or not, had she just run a pure economic platform on like price gouging, landlords, whatever you want to call it, had she not done stuff like, hey, the soul of the nation is on the ballot, etc., had she appealed more to pocketbook issues, people
So
may
she
have
had run a more lefty populist campaign, a la Mamdani, a la Bernie, 2016, right? If she had spoken more to the issues that some of the populist left people are talking about, you think that that might have put her over the edge, or at least given her a better shot?
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Because I argue with these people all the time, but like I think they were right on that. I think they were right on that. That Kamala Harris's campaign was not economically focused enough, and that a more economics focused campaign would have won. It was a winnable election. I think it was not a winnable election with Biden, and I think that was largely because of his own making. But Trump is a weak candidate. We had an opportunity to reset the table with Harris, and we did. Harris surged a lot at the start, and it wasn't just response bias, in my opinion. Because I mean, look, like if you look at like the surveys in general, you could see, and we did a lot of surveys showing how Harris had like picked up her support rates as she consolidated Democratic support, and independents really liked her because she got wall-to-wall positive coverage for 1 month. She had a great platform. And then what did she do? She started saying, I wouldn't disagree with Joe Biden on a thing. She went on you and said that. Her main focus was campaigning with Liz Cheney, saying, I want Republicans to vote for me. But
this is a
Cheney
fascinating,
is a swear word in half of non-white America. Like, that's the type of voter that actually looked at it and they were like, what the hell is this? And hey, remember, Trump was a guy that blasted the Cheneys 24/7 in 2016, 2020, 2024. He was like, these guys all suck. They're the ones that got you in this in the first place. So Kamala picked all the wrong things, in my opinion.
I feel like that's the narrative and the perception that all she did was campaign with Liz Cheney. But how many campaign stops did she actually do with her? Was
she
it
did like 2 to
3
4.
or yeah. It wasn't that, but that's certainly like the dominant narrative that we hear. But
the perception of it, yeah.
Going back to what you were talking about a minute ago, though, like I also want to sort of like, do you get as irritated as I do when the left flank compares Biden to say like LBJ or FDR? It drives me fucking insane, chiefly because they don't seem to realize that these presidents had fucking absurd majorities to work with, and they had those majorities because we had racist Southern Dixiecrats were like an essential part of that coalition. True. And then once we lost them, which was, probably a good thing that the Democratic Party doesn't align with like racist segregationists anymore. That we never really recovered from that, right? Like Obama got up to like 60 votes, but we never got even close to that kind of dominance ever again after that.
I don't find this to be a criticism that the left wing of the party levies so much as the I call it the blue sky brigade. Those are the people that are like, let's change hearts and minds, etc. My experience with debate, the left-wing commentators have been surprisingly open to people like, they're like, yeah, we get it. Like Manchin's going to have to run, or like folks like Dan Osborne, they'll generally find something to agree with these people on and then say, see, that's evidence that left-wing populism can work in like Nebraska. It's like those people do that. And in my experience, it's more the establishment liberals that get really mad at people like Joe Manchin and say like, you're betraying the American people and whatnot. And yes, those are the people that compare Joe Biden to FDR to LBJ. They say he has that type of impact. They say, oh, he should have that type of impact, etc. And then they say like, look, he didn't do that. And my response is the same as yours. I'm like, well, first of all, they didn't have those numbers in the Senate. They didn't have those numbers in the House. And secondly, and importantly, you guys don't want these people. You don't want to run the campaigns that'll get people in Nebraska to support you because you don't want to run conservative candidates on guns and immigration. Dan Osborne said he'd build the wall with his own 2 hands. And you know what the funny thing is? That the left wing is like of the party is now like, oh, Dan Osborne's one of us. I mean, yeah, sure, he had like the whole immigration signaling, but he ran such a lefty populist campaign. That's the funny thing to me, that the left wing is co-opting Dan Osborne, and all of us establishment liberals are like, oh, you know what? We just, we need to change hearts and minds. Like, no, like just.
So it's vibes. It's vibes, aesthetics. It's whether you can fit them in the box.
I didn't even say that. Vibes. How can it be vibes if Dan Osborne is saying, "I'll help build the wall with my own 2 hands"? And
because he seems more rustic, he seems more, of the people, he seems more populist. Or what is your explanation then?
He seems his policies are more conservative. He is trying to win conservatives.
Well, then how do you explain it? How do you explain that the lefties, if you're characterizing it correctly, and I don't know it, but I assume that you're telling that you're correct about it, and I don't doubt you at all. How do you explain it?
Oh, okay. Wait, sorry. If you're talking about why the lefties think he's one of them, yeah, sure. You can say that's vibes, but I actually think it's because the lefties, I'm talking about the general election voters, why they support him more. Why a lot of Trump supporters voted for Dan Osborne is because he had the independent on his name. He ran aggressively against the Democratic Party, and he was super, super focused on the anti-corruption angle and the conservative on immigration angle. And in Nebraska, which is an R+21 state, that's the type of thing you need.
So if we imagine President AOC with like a 65-seat majority, then do Pisco and Econoboy, does that strategy have more merit in that spot? Because you can afford to lose a few votes and still have like a 60-vote threshold there.
Yeah, I don't think so, because I don't think those people are going to answer to her. But I guess maybe if AOC has 65 seats, she's won nationally by 15, so who knows?
I mean, I think... Yeah, sorry, Hutch. I thought you were asking us. But I mean, my general reaction to what Lakshya says is that I would essentially agree. Like, obviously, I don't, inner party fights are not like good for your short-term electoral consequences. And I don't think I've ever represented as much. I mean, I think I've said pretty consistently over and over again that you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, you might, because of the perception of the party infight. You see this with the Republicans, right? Where like Trump is like super willing to primary Republicans who disagree for the most part. And he ends up endorsing candidates that are perceived as radical, that actually are radical, to be fair. And they end up losing elections by a lot more than they otherwise would, or they end up, barely winning elections that should probably not as close as they are. Maybe like Mastriano in like Pennsylvania in 2020. Yeah, it was 2022, I think it was. No, 2018, I should say. I think it was 2018, but I don't know, one of them years. He ends up losing by so much, right? Similar to like Mehmet Oz, who literally couldn't even beat Fetterman, who had literally was like struggling to even speak during his campaign because he had recently had a stroke, right? And so I take it that that's true, but I mean, I think that there's not really a great argument against this long-term strategy, right? That I think at the end of the day, at some point, in my view, for the Democrats' long-term success, you're going to need to get together a coalition of Democrats that's willing to get rid of the filibuster to actually substantively pass these policies. And I think that what that ultimately looks like, unfortunately, because there's so many Democrats that are old as shit and they're just stubborn and they're lost in their ways, that looks like recomposing the party through the use of the primary process. And, I guess to Lakshya's point, it sounds like, Lakshya, you might say like, oh, I might be getting at least in part what I want, because it sounds like you're expecting some turnover in the Democrats in 2026 because of a reaction to, just a bunch of people being really dissatisfied with party leadership. Yeah,
and I don't know if I'm going to like what comes with that, but like my vote isn't really up for grabs. I'm just, I've mostly been of the opinion that the party leadership has, for a long time, been averse to change. And part of why I think that you're going to get what you want is because voters don't think that the leadership is accurately representing them any longer. And I actually find, like, people always argue, is it going to be the moderates taking over? Is it going to be the left? I think it's going to be the left, because I spent a lot of time on this. I spent a lot of time looking at the polls, looking at the numbers. The primary electorate has just gotten way more liberal over the last 8 years. The moderates and the conservatives have either exited the party in a lot of cases or switched. And
wait, I gotta cut you off a little bit. How do you square this? Because there was a split ticket analysis that I saw of the last, was it 4 election cycles, that showed that like blue dogs and moderates performed better than the progressive candidate.
Yeah, general elections. I'm talking about primaries.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just talking about primaries here.
Well,
and winning a primary now, Democrats are going to find their voters are very different from the general election voters, just like Republicans found in 2016, just like they found in 2012, right? Like, winning a primary is not evidence of electability. Now, that's not to say that they can't just win anyways, because one of one of the nominees is going to win, Republican or Democrat. And it's not like Vance is a super strong candidate here. So you could make all types of mistakes in 26, in 28. You could go against everything that I say maximizes the odds, and you could still win, because whether your odds are 40% or 60%, you may be more likely to win with 60%, but
You're saying there's a chance. Yeah.
I think there's a chance. I think there's a chance, quite to be frank, that like AOC is president in 29. I said this. I think there's a chance of that. I don't think it's especially likely, but I think there's a chance. And I think there's a good chance, even if you want to condition it on her being the nominee. I think she has like a 45% chance of winning.
Wow.
So Lakshya, I want to give you about 10 more minutes, because Pisco has a hard out at 9:15, and we'll do a postmortem of our conversation with you before he has to go. So in the last 10 minutes, as part of like the kind of the epilogue to this conversation about moving forward, we talked about like specific tactics, but I'm curious about rhetoric, because I've been following you for quite some time. It's been at least a couple of years. And I know here lately, you were even featured in an article about Jasmine Crockett. I think it was either Vanity Fair or The Atlantic.
The Atlantic, yeah.
The Atlantic, a profile about her. So I'm curious what your prescriptions are for Democrats moving forward with respect to just rhetoric, because I'm sure you've seen the polls where people say, I want fighters, and I'm not happy with this kind of feckless timidity that we observe in the Democratic leadership. You're also pouring some cold water on that, and like, be careful what you wish for. What appeals to the online politics-obsessed punditry or political obsessives might not necessarily win over general electorate voters. I'm curious, what would you like to see from Democrats? How do you thread this needle? How do Democrats? What would you like to see in terms of them showing fight and vigor without being too online? And then how do you compare it to Republicans? Because again, I think there's a consensus here to one extent or another that the Republican Party is just by and large, for the most part, loud, obnoxious, and cruel in terms of most of their political, representatives. And so if it works for Republicans, can it work for Democrats? I get that question a lot. So I'm curious if you could unpack all of that.
The Republican Party's leaders are loud, obnoxious, cruel, and anti-intellectual. And the Republican Party, surprise, surprise, lost 10 seats on candidate quality in 2024. 10 seats, by the way, on candidate quality in 24. They've lost almost 20 seats overall on candidate quality over the last 6 years, because their leaders keep propping up ridiculously unpopular candidates that would get banned from a neighborhood barbecue, let alone a ballot. And the Republican Party is loud, obnoxious, and cruel, and that's why they beat the vice president of the most unpopular president in 2 generations by 2%. Another Republican should have won by a lot more. If you look at the global elections, other opposition parties were winning by a lot more. And if you look at the polls of like Nikki Haley versus Biden or something like that, you get to the idea that like, whoa, hang on, there are a lot more people that are open to voting for the other party than you think. This polarization that we've constructed, some of it is, yes, a lot of it is very real, but some of it is also just straight up like, we've kind of just decided this is the way things are, so we may as well double down on our side. And now we make choices with respect to it because, hey, the other side does it too. But the other side does it, and they've done a fantastic job at losing elections they should have won. Why did they not have a Senate majority in 2020 or 2022? It's because they ran people like Kari Lake, who frankly, and Blake Masters, who had like some of the worst focus group scores anyone has seen in their entire life, right? So I don't think this whole Jasmine Crockett approach of when they go low, we go lower works for us, because all of our candidate success at an individual level has come with people, all of these people who win red seats, that has come with candidates who are empathetic, who relate to the American people, and who say, I understand your pain. Those people are crazy. I will work with whoever exists to get stuff done for you because I answer to you and I don't answer to Chuck Schumer or to Joe Biden or to whoever it is. And that's the thing for me, right? Like, if this style of combative politics works, if that worked, why are the Senate results what they are now compared to the baseline that we were looking at before? Why is it that all of these combative fighters lost in 2022? Why is it that, people
Which
who are,
ones? The Republicans?
yeah, Blake Masters, Adam Laxalt, these types of people.
Could it be, that it's something ideological or has to do with their bona fides as opposed to just the mere notion that they're a fighter?
Bona fides are all strongly correlated, right? Bona fides to your base means I am willing to go to war for the policies that I believe are correct, and I will make fun of the other side and spit on them all I can because we don't need them. Kari Lake was the one that said, any John McCain Republicans, get the fuck out.
Yeah, Carrie Lake is definitely the embodiment of that failure in the Republican Party. Let me ask you, though, just to press you on this. What about John Fetterman? When Fetterman ran against Dr. Oz, he dunked on Dr. Oz all the fucking time, was roasting him left, right, and center.
How did Fetterman dunk on Oz?
Coup d'etat, he's out of touch, he's doing
social
this
media
that.
game, taking the memes.
But it was social media, it was memes, it was talking
and he was mocking him. Like he was disrespecting Dr. Oz. Maybe he wasn't like openly insulting him, calling him
he wasn't
a fucking
being
idiot.
crass.
Yeah.
He wasn't being crass, but
he wasn't like, oh, my respected jet. It was like, no, fuck this guy. He's a fucking loser, and I'm going to make fun of him. Do you see any, I guess, room for that, or is that like an outlier, or it can be done? It just needs to be done in a very targeted way in a very specific state, because Pennsylvania, that's not a deep blue state.
Notice the difference between what John Fetterman did and what Jasmine Crockett did, right? Jasmine Crockett calls Greg Abbott a guy who's in a wheelchair.
Hot Wheels.
Governor Hot Wheels. Look, like, I don't know if any of you guys have kids, but would you advise like your kids or your nieces or nephews to say that about someone you disagree with? No. Why would you? Dr. Oz, Fetterman attacked him as the type of person who is everything wrong with politics. Fetterman said he came here because he thinks he's entitled to a Senate seat. He doesn't even live here. He's here to cut your benefits. He's here to cut Medicaid, but he doesn't even live here. He won't suffer through any of those policies. And he centralized every attack on an anti-establishment angle with Oz, saying he's a corrupt insider. And when you establish that they're a corrupt insider, then if you drop the gloves, then
people accept it. So like John Ossoff, that's the through line to Epstein stuff, because I think Democrats should be posturing hard on Epstein through that lens of corruption. I think that's where John Ossoff, I think, comes off looking great.
While you were talking, I was thinking it's all coming back to me now. Fetterman nominating Dr. Oz for the New Jersey Hall of Fame and shit like that.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, where he was like constantly roasting, because I think Oz lived in New Jersey until he decided to run for Pennsylvania. So he's just it's all coming back.
I wonder if you have a strong opinion on it was Walz revealed after the loss that the Kamala team advised him to sort of like pull his knives back a little bit, like kind of moderate that rhetoric, because he was getting kind of scrappy. I mean, do you agree with that approach, or do you think he could have done it? Do you think he could have done it like a more Fetterman approach and not Crockett?
I think Walz had the ability to do that. I think Vance is a very weak candidate, and I think there were a lot of openings for Walz to kind of. I don't think the weird attack would have really moved too many people, but I think it would have gotten the Republicans to focus a lot more on that instead of focusing on economics and stuff, which were a lot better for them. I think had Walz gone for that, it probably would have been better than what he did, but Walz just straight up didn't do anything. Walz just stood there as like an empty candidate after September and didn't do anything. And I think it's hard for me to look at what happened and say that, it's hard for me to look at what happened and say that the right decision was made with Walz. I think, firstly, if you're going to pick Walz, let him be who he is. Otherwise, you may as well have picked Shapiro and at least gotten Bob Casey over the line in Pennsylvania.
That would have been so good, too. That's one of the biggest misses. Like, I feel sick to my stomach that we have Dave McCormick instead of Bob Casey.
Yeah.
And that really hurts me, man.
So I guess just to be clear then, because I don't want to misrepresent you, but with the limited time we have, what you're saying is, number one, the rhetorical ruthlessness from the Republicans has not been rewarded in manifest electoral results, that they actually far more often than not lose races they should win, or squeak races they should win by bigger margins, in part because they're assholes. Like there's a direct relationship.
That's correct.
Number two, Democrats in turn can not be Mr. Rogers and, you know, turn the other cheek like Jesus every time a Republican runs their mouth, but they have to do it in a very specific way, like a Fetterman against Oz or some other examples, and not fire back in the way that you consider like the Crockett version.
Not crassness for its own sake, as we were saying. Don't be rude for its own sake.
You can't be crass and rude for its own sake. You can't just like, I mean, it's just, I come back to this example because it's just so perfect. Like online, people loved the Governor Hot Wheels stuff, but that's the type of thing that generates cycles of negative press. That's the type of thing that gets a whole bunch of sympathy for your opponent. Who sympathized with Dr. Oz when Fetterman said this loser doesn't even live here?
Right.
Like, you can't give your opponent positive press.
I agree with that. I think that's a good point.
What do you think about the Governor Gavin Newsom? Because I think you either posted or retweeted this right before we jumped on. You know, Governor Newsom talking about like adopting Republican tactics is saying, okay, Texas, if you go to redistrict to the point of gerrymander, we'll do tit for tat. And again, maybe you agree or disagree. I'll tell you, I love it. I think even Hutch loves it. We love that energy. That tit for tat is the only language that these Republicans understand. What do you think about that strategy? Because it's not necessarily rhetoric. It's you know, measurable, tangible action to even the terrain. Do you oppose it or do you support it?
Gavin Newsom uses Republican as a slur. Okay, like that's, if you look at him talk, when he says like the worst mental health care in the system behind, forgive me, Mississippi, like the disdain in his voice is so crystal clear. You can tell this man uses Republican as a curse word. That's number one. Number two, that is weirdly enough exactly what the Democratic base wants right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is why this redistricting push is going to be, obviously it's good for Democrats because you get 5 extra seats. I actually think it's good game theory. You should go for it. You should optimize where you can and win where you can.
Hell yeah.
Redistricting civility stuff. But it's also great for one more thing. It's great for Gavin Newsom's 2028 ambitions.
Yeah.
Wait, Gavin Newsom's running for president? Yeah, of course.
He's running for president.
Yeah.
No, I'm very interested. First of all, I just want to say, Cowboy, that was like the biggest fucking jug of water. Can you show the camera one more time? Just put that
Yeah,
jug
it looked
up
like a
real
fucking
quick.
eclipse, man. It could blot out the
Look at
sun.
how humongous this is. Holy shit. That's like bigger than your head.
Jug.
Anyway.
I just don't want to have to go and refill it all the time, so I bought a big one.
It's actually not even water. It's recycled urine.
Ew.
true.
Anyway,
You know that? Yeah.
so for Gavin Newsom specifically, here's a situation where you could imagine, you know, using Republican as a slur. You often heard this whole thing of like, oh, well, Democrats, they talk shit about the voters. When Joe Biden said, you know, they're not from an island of garbage. It's, you know who's garbage? It's those Republicans or whatever, right? Like people were saying, is there a semicolon? Is there not a semicolon? What he was saying, people were like, well, that's the Democrats kind of pissing on the electorate and talking shit about the electorate. And there's always this back and forth about, you can't be mean to the voter. You can't be mean to the independent voter and talk shit about the voter and say they deserve it and stuff. And so Gavin Newsom, I think, among the Democrats has seen a resurgence for sure in the polling. I think you'd probably agree with that based on him now being a little more aggressive. Do you think that that's coming at the cost potentially of venturing too close to that Jasmine Crockett type thing? Or do you think that he's walking a more narrow line here where he could actually make a run without jeopardizing, you know, future ambitions with the actual general election?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in general, Gavin Newsom is the type of person who he's going all out nuclear. He's going for the whole, like, you know, hey, screw these guys. When they go low, we go lower. I'm going to fight them hard. But I think there's 2 advantages working to Newsom's favor that aren't working to Crockett's.
Yep.
Number one, Newsom is governor. He can do a lot of things that Crockett just straight up can't. If people want evidence that he's fighting for you, hey, he just gave you 5 extra House seats. Right? That's like the biggest thing that he can say, like, look, I did this. What did you do to stand up to Trump? I got us 5 extra Democrats. That's like the biggest thing here. And the second thing is with Newsom, like, yes, he's obviously running for president. This is not really as data backed, so forgive me, but the only election I've seen Gavin Newsom try in, like actually try was 2021 in the recall election.
The recall with
Yeah.
with what's his name?
It
He
was,
bodied. It was incredible. Yeah.
it was incredible political
Yeah.
like gamesmanship because he was always going to win that. I know Gavin Newsom had like massively favorable internals even before this whole thing. And Politico was like, he's battling for his life. I'm like, oh yeah, sure. With his D+16 internals. Yeah. He's battling for his life. But like, there was that one Survey USA poll that they messed up on that showed him down
Larry
by
Elder.
And
Was it
yeah.
Larry Elder?
Exactly, Larry
Yeah.
Elder. And they rode that thing to such a big narrative setter. That's the thing that makes me think like Gavin Newsom understands how to play politics with whatever base he's looking at. And that's why, like, I think I would probably say him, AOC, and probably Pete are like my
The top three.
front runners for 28. Not who I want to win, but like
Who
the
you
three
think?
most likely to win right now. If I had to do a draft, it would be 1 AOC, 2
Wow.
Gavin Newsom, 3 Pete
You're
Buttigieg.
breaking news. You're breaking news.
Yeah,
Or are you?
really, man. So listen, I know you got to go, Lakshya. I really appreciate this. I'd
This
like
was
to have
awesome.
you back on probably periodically, if that's cool with you,
I'd love
throughout
that.
the
It's great fun.
throughout the especially as we get closer to midterms. Also, because I've added you multiple, I'm trying not to take offense to it. I'm in my feels here a little bit, and because you have not followed me back.
Follow him
did
back.
follow
Follow
me.
him back.
What are
He
you
followed,
looking
he,
at,
he
Kyle?
followed
I-
me. He
I
followed me.
We follow you back.
You did?
Yeah.
No, really?
Oh, I just checked. Okay, X made me okay, so I've had this problem where X has actually made me unfollow people randomly.
Oh.
I actually don't know why it's happened, but like I go to someone's profile and I've like clearly followed them and they're following me. And now
Mhm.
I'm no longer following them and they're still following me. So I'm like, it's kind of weird. I know it's not
I'll
official.
shoot you a DM. I'll shoot you a DM. That way you've got the profile up, and you can add all of us. But yeah, I really
This was
appreciate this, and
fantastic, yeah.
Hutch for setting it up. This,
Thank you, Hutch.
Yeah, I appreciate this a lot, man. Thank you. Thanks,
Hey,
Lakshya.
sorry, Hutch. I hope I didn't let you down too
No,
much.
you didn't. I think you gave both plenty to both sides.
Yeah,
Hutch,
you,
you're-
you,
No, no,
bruised,
no,
you
you-
bruised all of us.
You did not let me down. Do you want to plug any of your stuff? Like, where
Yeah,
can people
please.
find you?
yeah.
Guys, we're going to have a really exciting announcement coming out soon. I'm at Split Ticket, split-ticket.org. We're going to have a really exciting announcement coming out soon about what we're doing in the future and who we're collaborating with. So I really hope that you guys stay tuned.
I just threw it up on the screen here. Splitticket.org.
Split-ticket.org, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, it auto corrected as soon as I
Okay.
typed it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bought both domains for a reason.
Yeah,
Hey,
smart. I'm
smart,
thinking, fuck,
smart.
are we plugging the wrong thing? Okay, no. Lakshya, man, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, man.
We'll be in touch. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, guys. Take
Appreciate
care.
you, bro.
See
You're
ya.
easy, man.
I loved that.
That's good.
It was fun because
I
it was like
loved
proxy
it as well.
wars. Stop!
Okay.
Come on, hey, Hutch,
I loved it
seriously,
all
thank
right.
you for putting it together, Hutch. I
Yeah, no,
appreciate
Hutch, that was awesome, man. Thank
Yeah.
you. And
Oh,
honestly,
Boys, I
I'm
got a
so
little
glad I
spicy.
gave Hutch that idea to get Lakshya on. I'm glad I gave that idea to Hutch, and Hutch
Oh, that's
implemented it. Yeah.
That got a little spicy there, boys. That got a little spicy there.
When?
We started. What do you mean when, Pisco? You're the one asking
Wait,
when,
what?
really?
Oh, that's true. Pisco, look,
listen,
Pisco's
I-
always a dick. Okay, don't worry about it.
I'm a
okay? That's
dick.
just
Yeah,
how he is.
sorry.
No, but
I mean, I feel
you
like.
know,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I really appreciated how he basically said I was 100% right. That was something I really did appreciate. And he is an engineer, and I think we really should take what he says very seriously, guys.
The STEM
to everyone
fields,
in the chat.
man. The STEM fields.
Well, you
are
can't,
just-
you know, he's an engineer.
Yeah,
I mean, what the fuck? Like, you know.
I love. We were like acting like he's God and like going to him for the.
It was
the,
like,
divine.
no, you know what we
agree with
were?
me, right?
We were four
straight.
fucking brothers going to the youngest
To
dad
mom
in the
and dad,
world.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Wait, you agree with me, right? And then like he agreed with us on like the weird things, and he agreed with like Hutch on like. So I didn't expect. I expected him to be like Bernie wouldn't win. I expected him to be like. I don't know that you shouldn't ever go progressive.
He
But
surprised me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was odd because he was like, you should just like go in all in or the other. Like you should be progressive or you should do the more blue dog moderate thing. But you know, I was surprised.
He's not
How
a super.
sober my analysis is.
He's not a super partisan guy. Like you go to he's just like squarely focused on the data, and so it doesn't surprise me at all that he had some positions that were more sympathetic towards like a progressive strategy, and some that were more moderated. But I gotta say, I'm walking away from this one feeling fucking fully vindicated. Just so we're clear on that.
Oh my
Everybody
Us
here
too,
is
us too.
On the big ones, on the big ones though,
Big
fully
ones.
in my corner. I'm just saying.
I think I think
No,
that
I
I think
disagree
the
with
two
that.
things-
100%,
I-
1,000%.
I can't wait for 40
100%.
post-mortem streams
Yeah, we
where
can have
all
a
of
debate
where
about it.
you three each
Yeah.
break
The
this
big thing-
down on your
The
streams.
big thing that we disagreed about was like the risk of, if you don't want to say war, like causing
That's not-
tension in the party to pursue this long-term plan.
But Hutch,
And
I didn't just disagree that I've always said my strategy was higher risk and higher reward, right? So that's one thing and I've made that clear in virtually every conversation I've had about that at the end of the day, like my strategy, you're probably gonna take like similar risks to the Republicans where you might lose some races that were otherwise winnable. You know, it's like a more volatile strategy for sure. But I've said that openly like a number of times, right? I wouldn't say anything different. I just think that in the long term, it would be good to reconstitute the party to, again, like marginal, on those marginal issues, I think, because there's like a lot of, potential reward there. I think that I think the biggest agreement that he did have with you was saying that, and for the people in the chat, I've always said, go back into the fucking streams where we've had these conversations. I've always said this. I've always said it was a riskier
Yeah, they
strategy.
make things up.
You know what? We were
I've
so
always said that.
fucking. You guys were so fucking horny to use him to litigate this. I totally forgot. I
It was
totally
so good.
forgot. I was gonna ask him about the big news today, which was Roy Cooper, North Carolina.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
but I was gonna say where he did agree with Hutch was to say that by nominating these more progressive candidates, right, you're basically like that's riskier. That like the econo keys of like winning primaries is probably true. That primary voters do want like a more bold and I guess like tilt progressive message, but that's going to lead to probably like an untested and more risky electoral strategy in the actual general elections, which I think is very sensible. I don't even know if I
think
he,
it's
he
worth
was saying, your strategy. He wasn't saying it's risky. He's saying it was ineffective. He was saying that it would there would be no long-term like benefit to it.
Well, I don't think
that's
no, because I mean, yeah. Like I don't know to what extent he would disagree with like the long-term story. I did make my point several times that, like I think at one point I even said like it's hard to disagree with like at the very least like the long-term calculus here. And I can't recall what his like immediate response was because I've got a terrible fucking memory. But in general, though, I mean, I think we see the results and like I don't want to relitigate it. Basically, just go for it, Hutch. I don't want to relitigate because
we
No,
can't
it's
do
fine.
it.
I'm just fully vindicated, and that's that. So.
Oh my god, we should have talked about it, but not right now.
We all know this is going to happen. That you all on your separate streams are going to review this, and this 2-hour conversation is going to become a 6th one. Hutch's editor is going to come out and be like,
"Who is my editor?" By the way, I love this. I love it. I think it's all kind of like a monopoly thing where he owns both the response and counterpunch. But I do want to say, Hutch, the part that made me laugh the most was when he was like basically critiquing Kamala's campaign the same exact way that like the Vanguard would, like, oh, why did she not lean into progressive economics? Why did she put her arm around Liz Cheney? It's exactly pitch perfect with what like people like the Vanguard would say. And
the Vanguard is going to have a fucking
But my whole point was that the reason why he has that perception was because of this, like, because they were trying to say like all she did was go out there and like campaign with Cheney.
Wait, you think that perception is the fault of the left and not Kamala Harris?
Perception's 9/10 of reality.
You don't think that the leftist media space covering her as though she was purely pandering to Liz Cheney impacted people's perceptions of this?
I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, that's fair.
Look, I think if last episode's conversation meant anything, Pisco and I love left-wing alternative media.
We do.
And we agree substantially with everything that they say. So I think
And
actually
we love
they were
Hassan, and
That's true.
he's really a cool
That's
guy.
true.
And we need to build bridges with Hassan
we
specifically.
do need to build.
Hassan is
Hutch has
a
actually
liberal.
booked Hassan for us as our next guest.
Oh, that's great.
our next
Yeah.
month.
Next week.
Because Hassan is he's very open that he loves freedom and he's a liberal and like all this stuff. They're all lies. So obviously, we support Hassan and he should be on the stream.
So
I mean, I just want to say real quick that like obviously our chat has always been super spicy. I feel like our chat is just very atypical of other podcasts
Yes,
in terms
they
of
are.
like
Very
how
diverse.
much fighting happens. But all of us have noticed that like other communities have started to discuss this sort of thing. And like, I just want to say that I think the rhetoric gets like way too fucking intense sometimes.
Agreed.
And so I need to do a better job of like moderating my chat a little bit. Like, I think we shouldn't run away from like passionate, even fierce like disagreements, but some of the crazy like ad homs that I think are being thrown in every direction is getting a little much.
I think
Well,
there's
they all
something
think we're on the
intentional behind
verge
it,
of
yeah.
a breakup or something, or like we secretly hate each other, and it's shocking.
Yeah, I tried to. I on my own stream, I tried to my small amount of viewers. I was like, look, people. I feel like every time we have a heated argument, people are like, oh, they're gonna break up. This is living, never learning again or whatever. But like, I think like what I've tried to like
Live in
one thing I
graduation.
appreciate-
I'll
Yeah,
take
exactly.
the
One thing,
lib.
one thing I appreciate about the four of us is that it seems like we generally do a pretty good job of like it's just a conversation, like we're all adults. Like we don't really take anything on this podcast personally, even to the extent that we yell and scream and curse at each other. I don't know, and maybe that'll change over, if we're still around 5 years from now, like maybe we'll truly get sick of each other because it'll just be like, be like an old married couple, like the four of us, I guess. But I don't know. We do a pretty good job of just
5 years, 100 years, Rick and Morty.
I know you guys are the same, but like I prefer really blunt conversations. I have really strong opinions about these things. I'm very resolved on some opinions, and I don't want you like I'm not going to hold back, and I don't want you guys to hold back. But I don't ever leave this podcast or having a conversation on stream thinking like that I don't like you guys or want to be podcast hosts with you or whatever. It's not.
No, 100%. Yeah,
it's never been like that. But if you look at our chats,
They fucking hate me.
you would like assume that is the dynamic when you just look at the chats.
I think
Especially
it's
the
good.
selected chat.
I think it's good. I like listen. I think it's good that tension's there. Like because we can all, we're all getting one guide at one point or another. There's plenty of one guys to sort through. But with the time we have left, because again, obviously, with this just having happened, this is going to provide a bunch of content for all of us to you guys, because I don't live stream this sort of stuff, but a lot of content to review in the next coming days. So the time we have left, Hutch, I'm curious, since it's your birthday, how do you feel, man? What did you do today? What are you going to do for the week? What are you going to do to celebrate?
I just worked today. I like quiet stuff. So on Saturday we celebrated privately. She's just like, whatever you want to do today. So got a delicious sandwich, drove to a beautiful lookout in Los Angeles, and I read.
Did she remember
science.
Hutch?
She does remember everything. She's very, very organized in that way. Wait,
Did they rebuild LA? It was burned down.
It's still on fire. Actually, they're still putting the fires out, so they haven't rebuilt it completely. But
that's not true. The president assured us that with all that water that he released from the reservoirs, everything's good now. It's golden.
It's starting to trickle down, so we're putting the fires out. But
it
was a super chill birthday, and I don't know. I like getting older. I don't know about you guys. I'm definitely more chill.
I do not
and mellow.
like getting older.
No,
not at all. Dude, I love it, dog. I feel like I'm becoming myself. Like it doesn't bother me at all.
What did you say? You read something. What did you read?
Rendezvous with Rama. It's like an old science fiction novel from I can't remember, but anyways, Denis Villeneuve's gonna make a movie out of it eventually. But yeah, it's just a fucking this. I don't want to get into the whatever. It's really cool. It's like a giant fucking spaceship the size of a planet comes into the solar system, and then we try to go in there and figure out what's in there.
What do they call it? Is that a Dyson sphere? Is that what they call it? Like these artificial
Dyson's sphere. That's the sun capturer. That captures this energy of the sun.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But speaking of planets, why did the clones just listen to Emperor Palpatine or Chancellor Palpatine, then Chancellor Palpatine, and just kill all their brethren, the Jedi?
There is an answer to this. There is an answer, and this is one of the things that Disney canon does better than the pre. Yes, precisely.
The what?
The biochip. So in pre-Disney canon, the idea was that they were just simply indoctrinated, like kind of organically over time. Like Attack of the Clones notes that they're more susceptible to like hierarchical orders in the first place. They're more inclined to just obey authority, and then over time they were radicalized to obey the Chancellor over the 3 years of the Clone Wars. But in Disney canon, Disney was like, it doesn't make much sense. There should have been more defiance. Like surely there would not have been uniform compliance with Order 66. And so they retconned it and said that actually Darth Sidious arranged for the implementation of a biochip, which as soon as he implemented Order 66, it was like a Manchurian candidate
biochip?
Yeah, it doesn't make it. I don't get it. I'm not a tech
What are you
guy.
talking? It's Star Wars. They have fucking space wizards, but a biochip doesn't make it. How the fuck is that the
so
least making
lazy?
sense part?
The biochip.
Did you guys even get around to watching Andor yet?
I'm partway through.
No,
Bro.
unfortunately.
I'm on episode.
Bro,
You,
Season 1.
Wakanda boy, have not read.
No, you and Pisco. Like this is.
I'm on episode 3.
Have you
I'm on
donated
episode
$10 to Mom Donnie's campaign, Hutch?
No,
How about we talk about that?
Oh, he hates Mom
not
Donnie.
yet. Not yet. No.
Still hasn't,
You still haven't endorsed.
Is there an Act Blue I did endorse.
Wait,
it.
I don't know if you want to donate to Act Blue right now. They're under like federal investigation.
Yeah, you don't want to put your name. You don't want to.
You're
going to
be part of a RICO case or something.
Yeah, they're gonna come for you. They're gonna come for you. They're definitely gonna come for you.
Yeah, you guys specifically, fucking Andor is about literally. It's about revolution. It's about revolution, bro. It's about revolution.
Revolution is a war that implies tankyism. Did you know that? That when you say revolution, what are you talking? Wait. It does obviously implies violence.
Yeah. I mean, these are good tankies. They're good
Bernie
space
called
tankies.
for a revolution.
Well, and you three are going to be on a WIC panel tomorrow, right?
I'm not going to be on that panel.
What?
I'm gonna.
No.
Oh, it's going to be the two of us. That's right.
I'm not touching that one with a 10-foot pole. Good luck, boys.
Yeah, no,
it's going to be me and Pisco, and then Connor, Counterpoints, and Destiny. And I messaged Connor. I said, look, honestly, I feel like we're going to be like the new spouses seeing their spouses fight, with their ex. We're going to be like just on the sideline. And then Pisco and Destiny are really going to kill each other during that conversation.
I mean, I'm pretty pissed, so definitely, yeah.
Oh, so wait, so people should expect aggro tomorrow?
Yeah,
oh, bro.
100%.
It'll be fun, guys. Yeah, that's
yes.
going to be on the esteemed Wick TV channel run by our friend Wick. And yeah, it'll be a 2v2 debate, I guess, moderated by Wick. And the topic
What time is that?
5 p.m. Central, I think. 6 p.m.
Hutch isn't even going to stream. He's just going to pop popcorn, throw it on the flat screen.
Oh, I'm for sure going to watch that on the stream.
I didn't even say the topic. The topic, which again, super disagree with the framing of this topic, and I'll say that as my opening statement. I probably won't.
Yeah, Wick's in chat, by the way. Wick's in chat.
Yeah,
so
bitch. Yeah. No, but the topic is basically, should we ally with the left, right? And I guess by the left we mean like people like Hassan. I just want to make one thing clear to all the people watching. Okay. I've never said, and I don't even know, maybe Pisco has said this on his own stream. I'm not sure. I personally have never said that we should really try to court the allyship of people like Hassan or like what you might consider like the tanky
Never
left,
once.
right?
I mean, we're really going to go through the ringer tomorrow to get actual claims by Steven, any kind of disagreement that he's able to identify, any prescription, and he's going to go through the ringer, and we're going to call him on all his fucking bullshit. In my opinion, it's all malicious. It's all bullshit, and you'll see it tomorrow.
Pisco's clearly a little bit more upset than I am, but I will say that
Wick is rock hard right now because he's already anticipating
Wick
the
is
donations.
like, dude, the content for fuck, dude, this is gonna be a fucking hell of a stream. But anyway, yeah, so that's gonna happen on Wick. That's literally tomorrow, 6 p.m. ET according to Wick, so pretty early in the day, but 6 p.m. ET, guys. That's when that's happening tomorrow. That's the content. From I guess Pisco and I that's happening soon. What about you and what about Josiah and Hutch? What do you guys got in the pipeline?
I'll be watching you guys tomorrow. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, so it's my regular schedule. I took it easy today. It's been I've been more active than I was the month before as far as content goes, and towards the end of the month, I get sort of burnt out, especially when I work weekends. I've been trying not to find a better work-life balance, but I've been working more lately. So today was only like a 4-video day. Tomorrow will probably be, depending on the news cycle, back to like the usual 5 or 6. And then actually in a couple of weeks, I will be in the Big Apple with my wife, visiting some family members, hanging out with Pisco. Pisco's going to show us around the Big Apple.
Oh, yeah. Well, by the way, there's also an active shooter that happened. I don't know if that's still going on, but right around kind of Midtown. So, thoughts and prayers.
Yeah. Oh, I was like, they're scheduling that shit in advance.
Oh no!
Because
right
I was
now,
saying this in a couple of weeks. I'm like, wait, what? That's awful. Yeah, I think I was scrolling on Twitter.
Okay.
On Fox News reporting on it, but
I'm glad he's dead. Yeah.
Have you guys been before?
Oh yeah, man. I've been many times. She's never been to the Big Apple. So I used to go up to New Jersey and spend summer between Pennsylvania and New Jersey with my grandmother and my aunt. And my aunt lives in Jersey, and she would always take us into the city every time I would go up for a couple of days. And then I think that stopped like my senior year of high school, and I've only been back like twice to New York since then. So like I've been there enough to remember the experiences, but obviously I'm not an experienced tour guide. But New York City, I think, is the coolest fucking city on earth. Like there's always more shit to do
there's
and
tons.
see and
Do you want to go? Do you want to go to Broadway? Do you want to do something? I can get us tickets somewhere if you want.
Yeah, so I'm currently I just got the tickets today, and stuff that I've got in mind. I want to take her to some restaurants. She wants to see a Liberty game, so I'll probably do that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, she's a big Liberty fan, and then one of her favorite shows is Sex in the City, so we're gonna go to like some
Oh,
spots
that's
from
right,
Sex
yeah.
in the City and stuff. But yeah, like I'm definitely interested in like packing it with as much stuff as possible. Yeah.
We'll get in touch. Oh,
You're one of those vacationers.
you're one of those people. You want to go see the Statue of Liberty, all that shit.
You're like, I'm up at 6 a.m. when I go on vacation. I got
No, fuck that. Fuck
itinerary of
that.
shit.
No. But like 8 or 9, yeah.
Just so you know, Josiah. Sorry, everybody. In 15 minutes, I'm going to be talking with Michael Tracy about
shit.
the reporter, about Epstein stuff. We're not going to like probably get into other points of disagreement, like about Ukraine and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to be getting his take. He's been a very prominent voice on Epstein and kind of had this weird alliance with Ben Shapiro and Alan Dershowitz, which we'll get into a little bit. But I
How
actually
did
think
that
it's a
come
good
about,
voice.
by the way? How'd that...
I like retweeted something he said, being like,
You
"You're the
used to
only one."
roast it. Am I making this shit up? Didn't you used to like
Yeah, I roasted
go to
him
town on him
Ukraine.
on Twitter?
Yeah, I used to reply guy him a lot, but
Yeah.
but I said like one positive thing, and he was in my DMs, and so then we set it up. But yeah, that's in 15 minutes.
That's
Right after
awesome.
this.
Right
And then
after
Hutch, content-wise, anything coming out your way in the next couple of days?
There's like a ton of like the editor man was moving this last few days, and so hasn't had time to edit some stuff. We have like 5 like really spicy content stuff coming out on the YouTube channel in the next week. So if you guys aren't subscribed, it's youtube.com/Hutch. Yeah, I want to go into more fucking shit about the last week, but we really don't have time. Like, there's a lot of discourse that kicked off in the last week. I mean, I feel like there's like 2 extreme positions where it's like, should we actively jettison the Hassans from the party versus should we like actively court them? And I think there's like a fucking perfectly logical middle ground here that I feel like a lot of people are just skipping over, but we don't really have time to
One piece of like discourse that I'm just like passively absorbing a little bit because I just don't have the time to pay attention to it. I'll be honest with you, because I don't follow Hassan. I've seen 2 things of Hassan, and that was his Jenks Giving thing from like last November where
Which
he was
was
having
funny.
a conversation with Jenk, and then his Pod Save America interview with John Lovett. So like, even though he's like the biggest lefty content creator, I'm not an online person. I don't follow him. But when I keep hearing like the Trump versus Hassan or Charlie Kirk versus Hassan thing, it's all over Twitter. I'll be honest with you, because I know obviously I follow Trump and Kirk, professionally. I'm blown the fuck away that is a close call for some people. But this could just be based on be based on because I don't know the worst of Hassan. But I'm thinking, God, like I keep hearing these things like Trump and Kirk have a vision for America, and it's like to me it's like seeing somebody say, well, sure, he beats the shit out of his wife, but he says he loves her too. It's like, it doesn't matter. He clearly doesn't love her. If he's I just like Trump and Kirk have a fundamentally anti-American vision. Maybe Hassan's even worse, but just like, don't tell me that Trump and Kirk have a vision for America. We all know that's not true. That's just not fucking true. Sorry.
I think Erudite added really necessary qualifiers because it's two different conversations. So is it like, would we elect Hassan versus Kirk if they had the constraints of the current like American Republic, or would we, that's a different thing altogether than electing potentially Hassan or Kirk, like, and giving them dictatorial powers.
This is a cope that Destiny came up with, but I agree you could construe the question that way. But
that was Erudite that came up with that I saw. I didn't see
Destiny backtrack, and he pretended that was a question that I was ever proposing that we should.
Well, I didn't see all that. I'm just saying that qualifier from Erudite I think does create a totally different conversation. And Kirk versus Hassan without any constraints, I actually do think that's a tough call. But
that's why I totally cop to it up front. Maybe I've not seen enough. But the thing that kind of gets triggered me, that's been on my mind like off and on like a little bit all day, is some sort of thing I've been seeing is, Trump and Kirk have a vision for America. We don't agree with it. It's not good, but it's America. And I'm just like, that is obviously not like anything you would describe as America. I think the vast majority of those Trump and Kirk oppose. Multipleural democracy, they fucking oppose it. The Constitution, they fucking oppose it. Like it triggers me so much.
I'm with you on that, because like that was the one thing that I thought was, and I'm gonna have a conversation with Erudite tomorrow about that, and I'm gonna press
Erudite.
Erudite.
Erudite. Kyla. Just call her Kyla.
but yeah, I think maybe she was speaking to the aesthetic and wasn't precise enough in her language. But yeah, like Kirk is fundamentally anti-American. If we're talking about like the holistic sort of evaluation of everything he's ever said, he's just like profoundly un-American. So yeah.
Yeah.
But even, by the way, if you answer, and I have to go in like literally a minute, but even if you answer a given way on this question, if someone says, as most of Steven's audience does, that they would prefer Hassan in the question, who would you vote for president? That doesn't mean that you're a tanky, that you support Marxist-Leninism. I haven't watched, the parts of Hassan's content I've seen are literally the Thanksgiving stream, one or two bits of reactions when Kamala had just entered the race, where I thought it was funny, and the one interaction that he had with
in Peru,
the Come Town guy.
Like in Peru, you guys there was a Peruvian presidential election not long ago where literally this was
and I would have voted for I would have voted for Pedro
Castillo.
Castillo.
They had a Marxist versus a fascist.
Yeah, and I would have voted for Pedro Castillo. And listen, right. And that's understanding that Pedro Castillo, he tried to do a coup of the Peruvian Congress, but I mean, we're talking about the fascist daughter of by the way, happy Independence Day, Peru. Can we all just shout out to Peru for your Independence Day?
Let's see.
I need to have that be said.
We did have a bunch of super chats, but I don't think it'd be fair, I guess, to read that one.
I have to bounce. Yeah. I have to bounce and get ready. But I love you guys very much.
Thank you for the super chats. Appreciate it. Hutch, thanks for setting this up, and happy birthday, buddy. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Cool. I'll be tuning into that debate tomorrow.
Oh yeah.